Already on blast. Haven't even started. Hey there, everybody, and welcome to the Tip-Off. Happy Tuesday to you. This is the show that sets the stage for all the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's 7-game NBA slate and 12-game MLB slate. Woo! I'm your host, Kayla Knierim. Today on the show, we have Eric Lindquist joining us and Greg Ehrenberg, who's already giving me trouble about my camera. We're off to a good start. Guys, how we doing?
I think we got to make it a drinking game. I think that's really what it is. We can't drink here on the show. We're professionals. I've got my coffee here. I'm ready to rock. But I think every time your camera shuts off, drink. That's kind of got to be what it is. So we can all get unconscious within the next hour or two.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. A shot of tequila every time the Kayla's camera turns off. So that's going to be what? That's going to be. We're going to have no audience left by the end of the show because I'm expecting it to go off now. That didn't work as well as I thought it would. But hey, listen,
honestly, that would have been incredible. Honestly, it would make this NBA slate a little more tolerable, although that's part of it.
I'm already anxious about my camera. No one cares, but here's the deal. I did some research, took out a part that I think was causing our issue. We'll see today. Yesterday, I was on the computer camera, so we didn't deal with the camera at all. The minute it shuts off today, if it does, I'm going to go back to the computer camera. So we're just not going to mess with it. But we're going to try it out and see. Fingers crossed. Oh, I'm so anxious.
This is not going to go well.
I think it will. I think I want to fix the problem. I think I did. We'll see. TBD. Stay tuned. All right. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for countless hours of content on the NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and every other sport that's in season. We want to talk to you about our sponsor, No House Advantage, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a first match deposit bonus of up to $20. Beat your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. Let's jump into our bad beats. Yesterday, we saw Russell Westbrook and Domantas Sabonis duel. You absolutely needed to have phenomenal outings from Draymond Green and Steph Curry, and the Alex Caruso and Taj Gibson chalk value come to fruition. How did you two fare last night? Greg, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a terrible night last night, but it wasn't profitable either. It was definitely a night where almost all of the chalk hit and all scored at a ridiculous high amount of points. It was a night where it's I know a lot of people get upset where it's I had this great lineup and it didn't win. It's yeah, well, you needed 400 points last night to actually have a good lineup. Anything, if you were scoring 330 or 340 points, it was kind of just a crappy lineup for last night's slate. So it was very high scoring. And for me, I was not on all of the nuts yesterday. Most of the guys I liked played fairly well, other than Doug McDermott. He kind of sucked. But other than that, I mean, I thought yesterday's slate was pretty difficult.
Yeah, for Eric Lindquist, a.k.a. Chalk Master Flex, a.k.a. Chalk Kent, a.k.a. the Chalk Donkey in the house. I had a great night yesterday, as you could probably guess. All the chalk hit. RJ Hampton, who I believe was somebody that Greg brought me on to during the, if you want to know, even here at Awesemo, I watch the Live Before Lock shows because I think staying current with news, hearing other people's opinions that you respect, that can really help in your process. And RJ Hampton was kind of the slate breaker for me. I was well over the field on him. Really liked seeing that he got up to 27 minutes in that previous game. A guy that I've just always loved his talent and kind of seeing that upward trend. I don't know if I had taken 2 days off. It might have been Saturday, so I might not have been playing. So I didn't even notice that RJ Hampton box score. He brought him up. I had a ton of him at 6%. Ended up having a couple sweats in the $4 over on DK. In the big Fanduel tournament, had a couple top 25s. So I had a really, really good night. Wish Kyle Kuzma didn't exist because that was my one black hole. I hate playing that guy. I talked about it yesterday. I knew he was going to bird me. I still played him. And so I had a top 100 lineup with Kyle Kuzma's absolutely unimportant anything involved in the stat line. But otherwise, a really good night for me. Thanks, Draymond Green. Thanks, Steph Curry. Thanks, Domantas Sabonis and Russ Westbrook.
Okay, that'll bring us to our NBA news. The Pistons are yet again a major talking point on the slate, as they are somehow even more shorthanded than yesterday, with every play on the team below 6,300 on both sites. How many Pistons are too many Pistons in lineups tonight, Eric?
Probably 5 on FanDuel, because then you cheated. You can't do that. So I think 4 sounds about right on FanDuel. DraftKings, I mean, we're just going to have a ton of interest in this team. It's so weird. Like, I spent my morning trying to figure out if Jahlil Okafor was with the team or not. That's the kind of day that it was, trying to figure out how many guys are there. I mean, this slate is just off the rails with this entire game. But from the Pistons side, we have to sit and wait around. Luckily, that game does lock at the 7 p.m. Eastern time spot. So Hamidou Diallo and Frank Jackson, obviously just enormous pieces in the context of this entire slate, because then guys like Saben Lee, who's at the min on DraftKings, Sekou Doumbouya, who would probably be locked into over 30 minutes. He's been playing high 20s already at 3,300. Isaiah Stewart, we know the kind of upside that he can have. He'd probably have all the usage there with Killian Hayes, and Sadiq Bey is expensive, but he really kind of is somebody that you need to probably be looking at his upside for mid to high 30s minutes. I mean, this whole team is just kind of ridiculous. They're only 4-point dogs right now as well, with all of that considered. So yeah, Detroit, play all the dudes, but waiting on Diallo, I would have a ton of interest if he did play. I'd be shocked if he did, because it seems like he's the one guy who isn't fake hurt like everybody else is on this team. But Frank Jackson as well, the high usage guy, the guy that I talked about a little bit yesterday, that can come out there and chuck a little bit, but didn't really need to go there yesterday. But today, 4,900, I still would have some interest going to him. 4,300 specifically on FanDuel just really sticks out.
All right, so 2 things here. First, we do have a breaking news item. LeBron James is going to miss the Lakers' next 2 games, still dealing with an ankle injury. So that's something I think we should hit on next, because I think that could have some potential implications on futures we could talk about, and just some kind of initial reactions there. I have some pretty big concerns about LeBron and Anthony Davis's health heading into the playoffs. But as for the Pistons right here, with Frank Jackson, Hamidou Diallo questionable, if both of these guys are out, then the Pistons only have 8 active players: Isaiah Stewart, Sadiq Bey, Doumbouya, Killian Hayes, Tyler Cook, Saben Lee, and Servetus, and Jahlil Okafor. Eric's guy right there, who his research would lead him to believe that he is on the team. He is expected to play tonight, or expected to be active anyway. If he's actually going to touch the court, who knows? But if they're actually only going to have 8 guys active, it's really hard to not expect massive minutes to, everybody who's available, because there's only 8 players. There's nothing else you could really do. So Saben Lee would be the guy who's the number 1 priority for me. But like somebody like Isaiah Stewart, he'd be hard to avoid as, I guess we consider him a pay-up option relative to the other players on the Pistons. But for cheap, Saben Lee would be my number 1 priority. And then Isaiah Stewart, who already is in my player pool, would also become somebody to get to. But yeah, it just depends whether those guys are out or not. Because if Frank Jackson and Diallo both play, then I don't really know that I want to have much. I don't know if I'm going to have much interest at all in the Pistons backcourt at that point, because then it's just going to be a bunch of guys who probably play, like 26 to 28 minutes. This team does not care if they win games or not. Well, actually, I take that back. They do care. They don't want to win. They actively want to lose. So they care a little bit if they win, but they're not actually trying to win. So it's really hard for me to expect that any of the guards would have significant upside if both Diallo and Jackson are playing.
Okay. Was there something else you wanted to add, or
Oh yeah, well let's jump into this Lakers futures. So pulling up the standings as we're going through this. Again, we're trying to incorporate more sports betting, more futures deals. I mean, Greg has kind of been the guy who's been on top of this constantly. You want to be reacting to this news within the next 5 minutes before things can get taken off the board, before things kind of get taken out of your hands. But if LeBron James is going to be out here for the next couple, I mean, they are dropping, looking at getting into like a play-in game situation. I think this really makes me want to bet the Clippers. My first reaction is like wanting to jump in and bet the Clippers for the Western Conference specifically, because I think their path becomes much more interesting. If the playoffs started today, you'd be looking at a 4 and 5 seed matchup between the Clippers and Lakers is kind of what I'm looking at. I think if the Lakers slide down, Clippers start moving up, their path becomes so much easier, because the Lakers would have to win a play-in game series, 2 of them, in fact, and then they would have to get into the first round, and then they would be basically having to win 4 series in order to get to the NBA Finals. That's a lot of question marks hanging over Anthony Davis and LeBron James's health. I think because I feel so good about the Clippers already in the Western Conference, I think I'm going to fire a bet right now over at my favorite little sports book and take a look at kind of where I can get the best odds at. But I think the Clippers become a very intriguing piece to invest in right now.
Yeah, the seeding, I think is going to be pretty important when it comes to the Western Conference. And then it's something also that's relevant to the Eastern Conference. But if we look at the West right now, so we have at the moment, the Utah Jazz are the number 1 overall seed. The Suns are the 2 seed. And then we have the Clippers and the Lakers as the 4 and 5 seed. Let's just say that holds true heading into the playoffs. That would mean that the Jazz, the Lakers, and the Clippers are all on one side of the bracket, and the Suns are on the other side of the bracket all by themselves. To me, that doesn't mean I would favor the Suns in a series against a team like the Clippers or the Lakers, but they have a much easier path to the finals if that's actually how the seeding sets up. So I've just been looking at some of the seedings as a whole recently, and it's not something I'm willing to bet on quite yet, but I think that there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be underrepresented in their odds to win the finals and their odds to win their conference finals based on what the seeding is when we head into the playoffs. Like then looking at the Eastern Conference right now, the Nets are favored to win the East. The Bucks have the second best odds. The Nets have the Sixers have the third best odds. But with that said, the Nets and the Bucks are on path to play each other in the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs. So one of them obviously is going to get knocked out. So I would favor the Bucks or the Nets in a series against the Sixers, but I still would think the Sixers have the best odds to make it to the finals if they're on the side of the bracket by themselves, just because they have a much easier path to get there. And it'd also be an easy hedge situation, right? So Sixers somewhere around, like plus 500 right now to win the East. If you bet that number and they just make it to the finals, assuming that, they're not going to have to play the Nets or the Bucks, that'll be a really easy hedge number as long as they get to the Eastern Conference finals.
Just to finish out the Clippers thought. So I just fired it off. I have my concerns, even with Denver and Utah on the one side. Donovan Mitchell has a big question mark surrounding him. We're not sure necessarily. I mean, we'll see in a couple games when he comes back and is ready to go. But Jamal Murray out. We saw Denver yesterday. There is just nobody in that backcourt right now that can get buckets. No Will Barton out there. Jamal Murray out for the year. You even have Monty Morris, who I think is one of the better backup point guards here that has some question marks around his health. So I feel pretty darn good about firing the Clippers on that side. The Suns look really good and have been playing very stout defensively, but I'm not sure how this is going to translate. We haven't seen Devin Booker in the playoffs, period. There's a lot of question marks I have about the Suns as well. So I think the Clippers really feel like the tried and true team starting to get back to health, got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George back here. It's going to be all systems go for them here to the end of the season. They're going to rest. They're going to stagger. And I think they kind of feel like the runaway favorites for me in the Western Conference, which is why I feel really good now with the Lakers in the situation they're in, having to win a bunch of games. That's the bet I want to make.
Good stuff. Hope you all were paying attention. All right. On the other side of the game, we mentioned before the Pistons. The Charlotte Hornets have a laundry list of players out as well, with Devontae Graham sitting, plus a completely depleted front court. Greg, who sticks out the most for you from the Hornets side of the ball tonight?
A lot of guys. It's this is going to be a slate where I'm gonna have to see where my ownership actually breaks down when I'm making my lineups later. Because if we're just looking at it from a points per dollar perspective, this can get really annoying. Where I'm just like, hey, who's good? Just a projection wise, everybody tonight, like everybody on the Pistons side of the game, everybody on the Hornets side of the game. So frankly, I don't know which players I'm actually going to end up rostering when push comes to shove. But I mean, right now, like Terry Rozier at 6,000 on FanDuel, that's too cheap of a price. LaMelo Ball. Obviously, he still is a really strong play. He hasn't been priced up quite yet. And if you look at his production so far since returning from the wrist injury, they've limited his minutes a little bit, but at least points per minute, I mean, it's still been there. So far, he's played 28 minutes, scored 35.75 DraftKings points. Then his second game back, 30 minutes and 36.5 DraftKings points. Given where the Hornets are in the standings, and then also that we've seen LaMelo's minutes trending up, I don't think there's going to be any kind of real significant restriction on with all these guys that are out right now. Definitely somebody I want to get to. And then Jalen McDaniels, I assume that he's going to end up starting for the Hornets, and he could even end up playing like 38 minutes or something crazy today. So he's my favorite value play. And then I think LaMelo and Rozier are both good pay-up options.
It's about the exact same for me. I think there's a couple like decisions we're going to have to make, and we're just going to have to see what that starting lineup ends up being. But right now, looking over on DraftKings, you have both Zeller and Biyombo at the min at 3K. You have Caleb Martin at 3K. You have Vernon Carey. I'm really hoping something just tells me he's going to be the one who ends up getting the start, and I'm going to lose my mind. But I'm pretty sure all of those 3K options, being able to mix and match, Brad Wanamaker, throw him into the mix as well. The one thing about Ball and Rozier, I mean, they stick out like a sore thumb. They're going to get all the usage, all the run for this team. if we're going to go crazy stars and scrubs on this slate, which I think some of the other value that surrounds, like you have Bagley for a little bit cheaper on DraftKings from both of those, well, a lot cheaper from both of those guys from sitting at 5K. You have Wright sitting at 5,100. If we're going to be paying up for Giannis, if we're going to be paying up for Luka, Steph, all of these guys, there's got to be some give and take in how much exposure you're going to get to this mid-range. But there's no question that they project out phenomenally well. I think there are enough routes where maybe this slate isn't completely dead, but you've got to get this game right. It's got to be the priority for what you're figuring out. That's what you're tuning in to listen to Loughran and Adam break down for the deeper dive, because it is going to be chaos trying to figure out what to do. And the starting lineup may not even be indicative. I mean, Vernon Carey started 4 games in a row. He played 35 in one and then ended up playing like 5 and 7 minutes in 2 of them, 15 minutes in the last one, and then has just completely been out of the rotation. We could be looking at a crazy situation in this game, but that's also the reason that you should be updating your projections constantly, especially with what that starting lineup ends up being, and tune into the deeper dive.
Absolutely. And as if we needed even more value, the Sacramento Kings will be without De'Aaron Fox, Harrison Barnes, and now Tyrese Halliburton as well, with Delon Wright and Marvin Bagley garnering crazy ownership. Eric, where do you stand on the Kings' chalk value pieces tonight?
You got to play them. This is even like, I think, a little bit more secure for me than some of the Charlotte Hornet value, because you do have Ball and Rozier who are going to be eating up a lot of that production. And then on the Detroit side, it's kind of just not a team that is like that appealing, not very good. Again, they're only 4-point dogs. That's just so crazy to me. But I think going to Sacramento here tonight up against OKC, another team that just doesn't want to win, that is constantly punting games, going to a guy like Rashawn Holmes, going to Marvin Bagley, who is the highest owned player on the slate currently, Delon Wright, they all feel like plays you need to be mixing and matching within lineups. There's really no way around it. I mean, for a chalk donkey, I should be more excited than I am about this slate, because it is at every single turn. I really like Rashawn Holmes as kind of like the go-to center over on Fanduel. And then Marvin Bagley. People just kind of forget that he's over a fantasy point per minute guy. He was the number 2 pick in 2018 and has a lot of pedigree. Just never really stayed that healthy. And if he's going to go out there and be playing low 30s minutes, because he kind of has to. So really pay attention to that Met2 news, because if he ends up out again, this becomes uninhibited run for Marvin Bagley. And that just is something I want to be invested way over the field on.
Yeah, and it's hard to really think otherwise. He's going to be popular, but I think it's good chalk. I mean, if we look at Marvin Bagley, as much as he's been, infuriating sometimes for DFS standpoints, because the minutes have been inconsistent, but there's so many guys out that he just kind of has to get minutes. So last game, he played 34 minutes. He scored 40 fantasy points in that game. And then, like you said, I mean, the injury report for tonight, no Halliburton. And the key to that is going to be when Bagley first got ruled out, we saw Halliburton play extended minutes. Even though they played different positions, it just totally impacted how the Kings play their rotation. So when they didn't have Bagley before, they played a lot more small ball. Earlier in the season, when they had everybody active, they played a lot more traditional lineups. Now that there's no Halliburton, I expect they're going to play a lot of lineups with 2 bigs. And they really only have a handful of bigs that are active right now. Like you said, Medu's questionable. Whiteside kind of is in the rotation right now. So it's Rashawn Holmes, it's Marvin Bagley. If somebody gets into foul trouble, sure, they could throw Hassan Whiteside out there. But as of right now, I feel pretty comfortable as long as he avoids getting hurt or avoids foul trouble. We're going to be looking at over 30 minutes for Marvin Bagley, and if somebody scores well over a fantasy point per minute.
Okay, that's going to do it for our NBA news. Guys, I forgot to open the show with May the 4th be with you, and I feel like that was a missed opportunity.
It's okay. You hate me, and the Star Wars love that I have. It's fine. I get it. I totally get it. Also, has your camera shut off one time? Everybody was looking forward to getting their liquor intake going here today. Has it happened yet?
I am sweating. It usually happens around the 45-minute mark. I have a fan blowing on the camera so that it doesn't overheat. I am paranoid over here.
Is overheating the reason the camera turns off?
This particular camera has been known to overheat from my research. So I'm trying everything that this video on YouTube told me to do. It didn't actually tell me to put a fan on it. That's just something I added.
All right. Well,
like blowing on your SNES cartridges back in the day, like just flat out. Oh yeah, this is going to work. Bam. And it really had nothing to do with anything. We just thought that it helped.
I thought that did help.
You know, it didn't, except, you know what's weird about that? So, all right. So that was what, like 20 years ago at this point.
Mm-hmm.
There was no internet. And like, Eric, we didn't know each other. We weren't talking 20 years ago, but you used to blow on your cartridge. Everybody used to do it. But how do we all know? There was no internet. We just all figured out the same thing.
That's a good point.
That's crazy. It was like word of mouth at the local Blockbuster. That's what it would have been. It would have been, you're hanging down at Blockbuster, you're getting a Mountain Dew, you're hanging out with your buddies, you figure out which games you're going to rent. You take them home and they're not working because 50,000 other people had been using that same game. That was the reason it didn't work. Not needing to blow on the stupid cartridge, whatever.
Yeah, well, look, here's the summary here, right? Here's what's important.
Break it down for us.
Kayla's camera better turn off soon.
No.
Now.
That's all you had? I thought there was
yeah, no, that was the important takeaway.
Oh, okay. Well,
I will use the Force. There we are.
Are you guys both Star Wars people, by the way? I don't even know.
Huge.
Really?
I watched a bunch of it during quarantine, but not when I was younger.
Interesting. So that was a quarantine ad?
Yeah, I mean, like, what else was I going to do?
Yeah, did you enjoy it?
I like the animated. Like, I like the Clone Wars series.
Clone Wars is awesome. That's really, really good stuff. All right, we can be friends again. The Mandalorian is the best, though. The Mandalorian is the best Star Wars product that they have put out. Disney Plus. Oh. You have to check it out if you like Star Wars. It's like a perfect. Oh, what is this? Jordan Klein is shaking his head behind the glass. We can't be friends. The guy just moves to LA. I'm excited to meet him and hang out, and that's just not going to happen anymore. You're dead.
But here's so like Mandalorian's fine, but here's one of the issues with it. I think if you're not into Star Wars and you don't know like who the other characters are that pop up, I don't think you'd enjoy it nearly as much.
It's probably true. But I know Star Wars and I enjoy them.
2 movies ever.
You've seen what?
Maybe 2.
And one of them's like the Christmas special or something.
It's just, I feel like it's such a big world and so much to know, and it's just I'm confused by like the times they come out and what it's too much for it. Like, I need to sit down and figure it out, but that would take a while.
Yeah, well, we can't even figure out a camera. I don't know how we're going to figure out a Star Wars anthology in a day. So just take your time, kiddo. Take your time.
Okay. Let's get over to our one-on-one segment, shall we? In these battles between stars, which player would you rather have in NBA DFS or prop bets tonight? Giannis and Kevin Durant went completely nuclear against one another on Sunday, paving the way for an intriguing primetime rematch. Which former MVP are you siding with on tonight's DFS slate, Giannis or Durant, Greg?
So right now, I prefer. I don't know why I said it that way. Yeah, prefer. Yeah, that's the new one. Yeah, pick-ewing. I have Giannis projected for way more fantasy points, like to the point where it's not even close. The only way that this would change for me is if like something were to happen where Kyrie gets ruled out at the 5:30 injury report. As it stands now, it's Giannis by a mile.
I'm right there with you. And I find it crazy right now as you're looking at ownership. I'm going to give away a little bit of the goods, but we got right now 36% for Giannis and 31.6% for Kevin Durant. Look at how much value exists on the slate. We just got done doing our entire intro feature for 20 minutes about 3 separate teams between Charlotte, between Detroit, and between the Kings that have an immense amount of value. Therefore, you should be looking at jamming in the top projected players over and over again. And Kevin Durant, sure, projects out pretty darn well. 9,300 gives you 1,400 savings, but we don't need that money today. And so right now, Giannis only 5.5 points projected higher in Awesemo's. I've right now got Giannis for 61 today. It's a game that's projected to be close, which is written. The main reason that Giannis doesn't get extended minutes is they blow so many teams out of the water. And I just don't see any way around why I wouldn't be way over the field on the best fantasy, 1.71 fantasy points per minute on the season. That's just his baseline. So like, I have no idea why we're getting, I know why, because Kevin Durant is underpriced for sure. But on a different slate, yeah, Kevin Durant would be the priority. But this is Giannis by a mile for me too.
Yeah, and then like you said, the important point here is that there's no real salary cap restrictions. Like Giannis is more expensive. I mean, sure, there are to an extent, except there's so much value on this slate and so many cheap guys to play that there's no real significant opportunity cost associated with paying up for Giannis.
Luka Doncic and Steph Curry will be both popular spin-up options this evening. If forced to choose only one, which point guard would you prioritize tonight, Luka or Steph, Eric?
So, we have 765 minutes with Kelly Oubre off the floor this year. 36.8% usage so far for Steph, 1.69 DK points per minute, which would put him right behind Giannis in terms of a fantasy point per minute output. Now, Luka Doncic, it doesn't really matter if you get Porzingis on or off the floor. He basically produces about the same. I would say the one nice feature about prioritizing Luka on DraftKings is you can play him at a small forward position, which I think really matters on this slate, because I think going through the Charlotte roster, you're prioritizing point guards and centers. If you're looking at Detroit, you're prioritizing point guards and centers. You're not going to be going to as much Sadiq Bey. So I think getting Luka at a small forward position might be the reason that I might prioritize him there. But if I'm looking at it from a raw points per projection, which is kind of what I'm doing on this slate, I've got to go to Steph Curry again, because those are just insane rates. And we can talk about him being scoring dependent, and I have in the past, probably to a fault, because he's the best shooter on planet Earth, and he does things consistently shooting the ball that nobody else does. And so you have to be able to factor that in a little bit, because he's done it time and time again, year after year after year.
Yeah, it is Steph Curry for me as well. And a lot of it's matchup dependent, right? Because Luka's playing against the Heat, and while the Heat have been disappointing this year, that game has a 216 total. So it's going to be played at a much slower pace than the Warriors-Pelicans game, which has a 234.5 total. And then also something that I have to bring up for the millionth time over the last couple of weeks is Steph Curry's usage rate and playing time down the stretch of the season. It's been ridiculous as the Warriors push for a playoff spot. So he's at a usage rate over 40% now in 3 consecutive games. Steph, in competitive games, he's playing, even last night, didn't even end up being competitive. He still played 35 minutes. If that game was closer, he could have played close to 40 in that spot. So this is a game where also the Pelicans are a team who are behind the Warriors in the standings, and the Warriors could really kind of, just put them out of commission for the rest of the regular season with a win here. So if the game's close, I think Steph probably plays somewhere in the neighborhood of 38 minutes with like a 40% usage rate, and that's something that's really hard to avoid.
Teammates LaMelo Ball and Terry Rozier both stick out as incredible options tonight in that Pistons-Hornets game you need to get right. So which of the two will you have more of in tournaments tonight, Ball or Rozier, Greg?
So right now, I think it's going to be LaMelo Ball for me. I have him projected slightly higher. There's a little bit of concern that maybe he doesn't play quite as many minutes as we would like. But I mean, for me, just given how many guys are out for Charlotte, I think he's going to kind of be forced to play those minutes, even though he's only played 2 games back from a wrist injury so far. But LaMelo Ball, he's just been such a better performer overall for the season that I'm going to lean towards him. It's also a little bit different site versus site. Like on DraftKings, I think it's pretty comfortably LaMelo Ball. On Fanduel, where Rozier's a little bit cheaper, I think there's a little bit more of a discussion to be had.
Yeah, I think that was the main point that I wanted to take out of it, is kind of being able to get your exposure playing multiple sites. I think that's something that we've been talking a lot about. Adam's been talking a lot about on the deeper dive as well. You want to make sure that you are being price sensitive and figuring out spots to get exposure to multiple players, like multiple pools of players. Because if LaMelo Ball fails today, that can be a huge dagger to you from the get-go. So I think prioritizing Rozier over on FanDuel, where he is a little bit cheaper, getting your exposure to a ceiling game there, because if he went out and put up 50 here, it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. But I would be under the field on DraftKings at his current ownership for sure. And LaMelo Ball would definitely be getting the priority for me there, where he has like we've seen triple-double upside from him. I don't know if he'll get enough minutes to maybe make that a possibility, but there's nobody else out there accumulating the usage besides those two. So LaMelo Ball, I think, on DraftKings, and Terry Rozier, my priority right now on FanDuel.
Priority. All right. We are now going to head to the diamond for some of the top bets and plays on tonight's MLB DFS slate. Which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you guys think is the best overall bet to hit a home run tonight? We've got Freddie Freeman plus 230, Ronald Acuna plus 250, Rhys Hoskins plus 270, Stanton plus 280, Austin Meadows plus 300. Eric, we'll start with you.
So Joe Ross is very, very bad at pitching, and I think that that's going to be reflective of Atlanta's ownership here tonight. I would much rather, and this is a nice betting segment, I would much rather try to target Ronald Acuna or Freddie Freeman in the prop market, I think, rather than play them in DFS. I don't necessarily feel very good about rostering a chalk Atlanta team. I don't feel good about rostering chalk anytime on an MLB slate here. So in the DFS world, I'm going to be avoiding them, but I think Freddie Freeman and Ronald Acuna going up against Joe Ross sets up really, really nicely for him tonight. You could also be going to the longer shot in Austin Meadows. I would have no issue with it, but Freddie and Acuna, definitely strong options in the DFS world, but I think I'll get my exposure to them in the prop market.
Yeah, give me Giancarlo Stanton. I can't remember the last time I actually targeted the Yankees in DFS because they've been ridiculously popular basically every slate for weeks on end, and they just continually fail, and the field just keeps going back to the Yankees every night. But this is one of the first slates we've seen the Yankees not really picking up much ownership, and I don't think they should be one of the most popular teams or anything, but I do think they should be much more than 1% owned as a stack, going up against Zach Greinke tonight, who he's found success this year with a 3.44 ERA, except still he's somebody who's 37 years old. We're seeing his velocity decline quite a bit over the last few years, and he's not generating swing and misses anymore. So that's something that's pretty concerning to me about an older pitcher potentially maybe looking like he's on the downswing now. So Zach Greinke only striking out 6.63 hitters per 9 innings. His strikeout rate all the way down to 18.4%. Guy who's pretty regularly been in like the 23 to 26% range over the last few years. So a lot of red flags with Zach Greinke, and I think this could be a spot where he really gets blown up against the Yankees offense that's underperformed so far this year.
Okay. And now for biggest arm, which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best strikeouts over bet tonight? And is there a good under bet that you like? We've got Jacob deGrom, 10.5 strikeouts, Aaron Nola, 7.5, Sandy Alcantara, 5.5, Justin Dunn, 5.5, Mike Minor, 4.5, Greg.
So I'm going to go with, I'm almost always just like Jacob deGrom, and just because he's Jacob deGrom, forget about it. But Aaron Nola, only 7.5 going up against the Milwaukee Brewers, who, even though they have Lorenzo Cain back from injury now, they have Christian Yelich back from injury. It's still a team that struck out a ton last year. And to open up the season this year, it's a team that's striking out nearly 30% of their plate appearances. So Aaron Nola, one of the best overall pitchers in the league, that 7.5 strikeout number just looks a little bit too low for me. So I'm going to side with him. And then something else to consider with Nola is, to me, deGrom is the clear top pay-up option on today's baseball slate, but it looks like there could be some weather concerns in the Mets game tonight. So if that's a game that either ends up getting postponed or delayed, or it looks like the weather's going to get worse the next couple hours, then going pretty heavy on Aaron Nola, something that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, avoiding the Jacob deGrom free square, basically. That's always enjoyable. That would be a bummer to lose that game. But I want to amend one thing I wanted to say. So we do have the DFS, the MLB Top Stacks tool is free right now. I just updated it. Atlanta actually has slight positive leverage. I mean, there's basically the ownership and their top stack percentage is basically identical. So I do think they make for a good stack here at the moment. We'll see what that ownership ends up at. But you have Tampa Bay and Washington kind of getting the negative leverage that you really don't want to be going to on this slate. But anywho, my pick today would be Mike Minor at 4.5. So there are some 6.5s. This just really comes down to utilizing OddsShopper correctly. There's some 6.5s existing out in the world there. I'm not even necessarily sure. I mean, there's huge juiced money going towards the under of that. And then the over was like at plus 190 or so around different sports books. So not necessarily saying from the 6.5, but 4.5. If you're getting the over on that right now, Mike Minor, he's facing Cleveland, which doesn't strike out a ton, 23.2% K percentage. That puts him at 21st in the league. So not a great targeted team, but he's actually performed pretty darn well this year. 9.47 Ks per 9, looked pretty decent the last 3 outings. He's eclipsed that 4.5 number. 4.36 xFIP doesn't look pretty, but we're targeting strikeouts. So I think he can hit the over of that while still kind of being ineffective. So not a pitcher I want to be rostering in DFS too much. But I think he makes a contrarian like spend down option, going towards those Ks if you were to rack up 7 or 8. So I really like the over on 4.5 there.
Did Eric's mic glitch for anybody else or just me?
Yes.
Well, okay.
Did it?
Yeah. So
it was, you were underwater.
But it also echoed. It like echoed also. So it was like you said the same thing like really fast 3 times in a row. That was just how it came across to me. I was like, well, I just didn't know if that was only me, but I couldn't not acknowledge it.
Sorry.
Someone else with technical issues. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm deflecting for you. Your camera's a nightmare, so my mic has to pick up some of the slack here. I think we're good. I think we're good.
The easiest way to improve the show just be to turn Eric's mic off.
Oh, whoa, Greg.
I like. By the way, if we could just have the show. Eric has no mic, Kayla has no camera, and I'll just sit here and riff for an hour.
We are also with Eric over here.
I can't tell if Eric actually muted himself right now, or if he's just mouthing words.
He's an actor. I'm pretty sure he's acting.
Oh no, he actually physically turned it off because you know why?
I did.
He's not that good of a method actor to where he could only pretend he's talking.
No, the best acting is the absence of acting. There you are. Let that marinate with you for a little bit.
No, that's one of those
Acting
things that's one of those things that's supposed to sound like it's insightful, but it's really not. Like, I understand the gist of it, right? It's supposed to be natural, but really that's just nonsense. You didn't say anything of significance. That's like it's one of those sayings where it seems deep, and then you think about it, it's like, no, it's not.
That's just a Yogi Berra thing. It's just flat out what it is.
Okay, and with that, let's head back to the NBA. It's time for No House Advantages prop or not. Here are some of No House Advantages props of the day for key players. Guys, do you like the over or under on them, and how many points would you assign? First up, we've got Delon Wright, 3.5 assists. Greg.
So that is a number that to me is pretty easy to go over with. So, I mean, we look at the Sacramento Kings and the amount of guys that they are missing right now. We talked about it before. There's no Tyrese Halliburton, no De'Aaron Fox. And even though we haven't seen Delon Wright consistently play a big role in the games that there's been no De'Aaron Fox, with no Fox and no Halliburton, I have to assume that we're going to see a pretty significant role from Delon Wright. And I think the fair line for that should probably something be like 5.5 or something like that. But the 3.5 is much too low.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up here now. I looked up a little bit earlier that it just becomes kind of ridiculous when you take Halliburton off the floor, De'Aaron Fox off the floor. Delon Wright is going to be assist rate right around 20%, which 3.5 is just way too low of a number for a guy who's going to be playing low 30s minutes. Pretty easy over. I think he's kind of an automatic 10-point play over on NHA today. Definitely sticks out above the rest for me.
Next up, we've got Blake Griffin, 23.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. Greg.
23.5 for Blake Griffin. That seems like a very, very high number to me. So one thing we've seen with the Nets front court in the last few days is we've seen the minutes a little bit more condensed because number one, LaMarcus Aldridge, he retired out for the rest of the season, but also Nick Claxton was out because he's in the NBA's health and safety protocols. Well, Claxton's back now. So there's a handful of guys the Nets are going to have to give minutes to in the front court. Claxton was active last game. He didn't play any minutes. But overall, I would still consider him overall to be the guy who's had the most success at the center position for the Nets this season. So he's going to be right back in the rotation now that I assume his conditioning's up to par for him to be able to play. So we're looking at DeAndre Jordan, Nick Claxton, Blake Griffin, and Jeff Green all playing some center minutes. That makes it really difficult for me to think that any one of those guys is going to play enough to where it's going to be something that I really want interest in from a fantasy perspective, or something like No House Advantage where the prop is so high. Based on what we've seen from Blake Griffin while all those guys were out, that's really easy under for me.
Same here. Also, you're getting a true center matchup for DeAndre Jordan. I'm assuming he's going to be starting there again. Played 24 minutes against Milwaukee. They're going up against Brook Lopez. I think that kind of makes some sense for him there. Jeff Green been playing low 30s minutes. I think some of the shine is starting to wear off. Not that Blake Griffin didn't come over and make some kind of a difference for this Brooklyn team. He can be out there. I kind of expected him to be the guy who was playing, 18 minutes a night, kind of just fill in the gaps for anything that they needed, could play some 5 or 4, depending on what lineups they were rolling out. But Blake Griffin not going to go out there and put up 18, 20 a night by any means. And I think because this number is so high and you're basically saying, okay, I don't think he's going to score 15 points, because he's going to get 6, 7 rebounds more than likely every single time out. But Blake Griffin, the under of this really, really sticks out. Another great high confidence slot on NHA today.
Blake is not a name we've talked about a lot on the show.
Yeah, because he's not DFS relevant because they made him 5K and he will never pay off 5K at this point in time, especially on a slate like this, where it just doesn't even make any sense. I believe he's 4,800 over on DraftKings. There we go. And what's his price over on Fanduel today? Watch this. He's going to just destroy this slate because I'm just talking absolute smack about him not being good. 5,400 on Fanduel. Get out of here.
And you know what else is fun? Here's what I really appreciate about Blake Griffin, how he just clearly dogged it when he was in Detroit. Like, he went that stretch where it was like he didn't have a dunk for something like 18 months or whatever.
Yep.
He comes in his first possession on the Nets, and like first game right away, dunk, his first bucket with the Nets. And he's looked obviously not like rookie year Blake or anything like that. But he clearly has a lot more spring in his step than he showed during his time in Detroit, where he was just kind of doing light cardio, jogging back and forth up the court and just didn't really give a care. Now we're seeing him at least be productive with the Nets to the point where it's like, okay, he can contribute to a winning NBA team, where he just didn't look like that player in Detroit at all.
Same with Harden, really, towards the end.
Yeah, we can talk garbage about Harden. I'm okay with that.
Okay, let's talk Giannis, 5.5 assists, Eric.
So this is an interesting one. So I think we're not necessarily looking at targeting. The main thing I was pointing out here is that we don't have the 3-point prop. I don't know if it was something where NHA was listening into me, because I've been playing the under on 1.5 for Giannis constantly over there, and it's hit pretty much every single game that I've played it for the last 10. And then it's not even on the board today, which was really heartbreaking to me. So now I'm forced the only real good spot to be looking at would be the over of assists. Everything else is basically kind of meh, taking unders over here. I think it looks like it's going to project out decently well for some of the unders over on NHA today. But Giannis not necessarily somebody you need to be looking over there. A big piece of my DFS portfolio, but won't be any part of any NHA lineups that I make.
You know, it's funny that you bring that up today, because Giannis did hit 4 3-pointers last game, and that has to be his high mark for the season, right? I don't even know.
Yep.
Yeah, so he hit 3 oddly on opening night, and then didn't have another game with more than 2 until last game. He hit 4 against the Nets when he scored 49 points. I think
wasn't on the main slate though, fortunately enough, on Sunday, so didn't even have to worry about it.
That is true, because there's always the weird Sunday slates where they have games kind of spaced out throughout the day. Yeah, I don't have a real strong lean on this number if I had to go with one side, where I was forced to. You know, if somebody broke into my house, put a gun point to my head, and they said, listen, over under 5.5 assists for Giannis. If you get it wrong, then we're going to kidnap Eric and you'll never see him again. I'd be like, boy, that is a lot of pressure. I would go with the over.
I'm going to try to get it wrong.
No. I would try to save you. You don't. No, I'm lying. I'm like, all right. So here's what they said. They would say, if you get this right, you'll never have to see Eric again. Then I'm like, all right, give me the over for Giannis, because of the pace of play of this game, right? I mean, we're looking at a 242.5 total for this game, and there aren't very many games on today's slate that match that. We've got the Warriors Pelicans game the closest at 234.5, but still it's 8 points away. So just given the pace of play that's expected here, I would maybe go with a slight lean towards the over, but like I said, I'm not being held at gunpoint. Eric's life isn't on the line or anything like that, so I'd rather go with other props.
Thank goodness for us all.
Yeah.
All right, friends, don't forget to play on No House Advantage, our sponsor, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a deposit bonus of up to $20 for new signups. Beat your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. We are in the danger zone, still kicking. I'm so nervous, but this is usually when it turns off. So just a heads up.
45 minutes in.
45 minutes in. We can do this. We've got 11 more minutes of the show. Also, we forgot to mention yesterday that Spags called Eric Greg, and then he tried to blame it on the fact that he does a lot of shows with you. Discuss.
He's a liar.
Yeah. Spags is full of shit. By the way, I'll be on Live Before Lock with him at 3:00. So that's very exciting. 6 p.m. Eastern time. Tune in for all the goodies.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We're going to get to our good dog, bad dog. We don't know if we have. Oh!
There he is.
Whoa! What
good boy.
Wait, what a sad sound effect is that? I know we got new technology behind, but like the sound got cut off. Like the dog, like it sounded like somebody off the dog in the middle of it barking. You're like, hey, I know how to solve this issue. But yeah, like what happened there? It was like half a bark. We didn't even get both barks.
It wasn't me being held at gunpoint for the Giannis prop.
No,
it was this poor dog that we needed to save, and he didn't make it.
Those sound effects have really gone down recently.
Sorry. Woof, woof. I think Spags literally did the dog sound effect yesterday. It was good.
He did. All right. In real life, there is no such thing as a bad dog. And betting in DFS, there are a lot of underdogs who have no chance in their game. So who's a good dog to target tonight and who's a bad one? Eric, give us your good dog.
Oh, I'm such a fish. Okay. I'm just throwing it out there.
Go on.
I just got done talking about how much I love the Clippers and the futures, how I want to be betting them and everything else. This line is very confusing to me because I don't know if Fred VanVleet plays here or not. Do we have news on that yet, Greg? I haven't seen anything happen with Fred VanVleet yet.
All right. So the Toronto Raptors, the injury report, which by the way, you know who does a great job with the injury reports is our guy, the news god, who's right now in our YouTube chat. But yeah, Fred VanVleet is going to play today. So we have about as healthy of a team that we could normally get from the Raptors. I mean, outside of OG Anunoby, he's out today because of injury maintenance. And then we have the other guys who have, been out for them, like Chris Boucher and Gary Trent Jr. But at least the core guys I consider for Toronto, Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, Kyle Lowry, all expected to play today, unless something was to change at the injury report update 43 minutes from now. But as of now, I think they're all playing.
So plus 10 is a gigantic number to be getting on a relatively healthy Toronto team with the core pieces of Lowry and Siakam, who we just saw annihilate the Lakers. Not that that's super impressive in the current state of the Lakers, but I thought it was still pretty impressive to watch. And then Fred VanVleet getting back in the mix there. That's a pretty potent team. Patrick Beverley now, it sounds like, is questionable. Might end up getting to play in that one a little bit, but that doesn't really matter to me. What matters is that on the Toronto side, considering all their guys other than Chris Boucher are going to be there that really matter to me, I kind of think 10's a lot to be getting in this spot. So I think my favorite bet on the entire board today going to the Toronto Raptors.
Okay.
You know, that was going to be mine, but in the interest of differentiating a little bit, I will go elsewhere, and I'm going to pick the Golden State Warriors, who are underdogs against the New Orleans Pelicans tonight. The Warriors handled the Pelicans pretty easily yesterday, and I mean, looking at the Warriors roster right now, like, we still have Kelly Oubre, who's out, but I mean, he's kind of been terrible this year anyway. But the Warriors, I think they have the ability to kind of increase their overall team ability in a way that most teams can't, which is earlier in the year, they were pretty conservative with Steph Curry's minutes. They were pretty conservative with Draymond Green's minutes. And now that they're giving these guys a lot more minutes they're playing early in the year, that's just the easiest way to improve your team and lead to success. So Warriors, I don't think they should be underdogs playing against the Pelicans tonight.
Greg, hit us with your bad dog.
Bad dog. I guess I'll go with the Cleveland Cavaliers. 12.5 points is a lot, but I mean, at home against the Phoenix Suns, one thing that's kind of surprising about Phoenix is they have not rested guys at all this year. I thought this was a spot where maybe they would go ahead and rest people, but still not doing it. Chris Paul, a guy who a few years ago, everybody kind of assumed was washed. It looked like he was going to be on one of the worst contracts in the NBA, but hey, he's gotten healthier as he's gotten older. He attributes that to going vegan. But whatever it is, Chris Paul never gets injured anymore. Somebody who was injured all the time, but he's been healthy a lot this year. He's playing in back-to-backs. He's not resting. He's playing against crappy teams like the Cavaliers. So as long as everybody's healthy for Phoenix tonight and they don't decide to rest anybody, I think they should roll pretty easily.
You stole my bad dog, so it's now evened out. I stole your good dog. You know what? A lot of stealing going on. I'm going to move on. Here we go. Detroit, my bad dog. So as much as we can be looking to them to roster, and they are a huge part of the DFS slate, I really don't know. I think this should be a lot higher than 4. We've seen that number actually crash down from 6.5 to 4, which is shocking to me. And I think that has to do with PJ Washington and Miles Bridges, obviously, a lot of their front court depth. But don't underestimate how badly Detroit wants to be losing basketball games. And so I still think with LaMelo Ball, that's a huge positive getting back in the lineup for this team. So I know the sharp money has dropped that down to around 4 here. There's a couple books you can still get different numbers around. But I definitely think betting against Detroit is going to be a profitable proposition, even in some of these tighter spreads against worse teams. Definitely give me the Charlotte side.
Good stuff. All right. And because Eric's forcing pirates on us, it is time for the pirate parlay of the day. Eric, I'm going to let you take this one.
Gregory did not get the pleasure of meeting me mate the other day. So here we are. We are back. -1.5 Royals run line. Oh, by the way, yesterday, winner chicken dinner, letting it be known. We got Royals -1.5 run line +140. DeLon Wright over 7.5 assists +100. That is a +380 payout. Go collect me treasure.
Wait, what just happened?
Where's Greg?
Scared me. Why does he see my camera?
I was so unenthused with what was going on there that I was like, all right, I'm just gonna throw everybody off. So by the way, nobody knows what I just did. This was a very
I'm so confused and I have anxiety, but I'm still here.
It said Kayla's camera. That was actually really funny. But I keep the bit going.
Eric's never coming back or Greg's never coming back on the show.
All right, go. I don't know what that was. And this is why Eric was earlier. When I was looking at what we had planned for the show, I was like, "What is this? What is this pirate parlay of the day?" And Eric was like, "Oh, wait until you see this." He was like, "You weren't watching yesterday." I was like, "No, I have things to do that aren't listen to."
Don't look at me, Amazon cart. We got goodies on the way.
Yeah. Anyway, this is well, that was
I need I need some Pirates of the Caribbean theme music for this bit. I think we need to get something. We need something like firing, inspiring. Dun 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 dun. A little bit of that. That would really kind of send it home. But yesterday, I don't know about you guys. I mean, the Dodgers game didn't end up going, but the Twins winner. Domantas Sabonis hit over 21.5 early in the third quarter. It was a beautiful parlay, hit just over plus 180. So we're 1 for 1 in the Pirate department. You can make fun of the Pirate voice all you want, but I'm sending money home. Minus 1.5 Royals run line, lock it in. And then we got the other side of that with the deal on right. That's an automatic over 7.5. Alex has them projected for right around 8.5. Love it.
Dun 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 dun. That's Pirates, isn't it?
That's
you guys
beautiful.
know the
You
guys know the Eric Bledsoe tweet where he wanted to be traded and he just tweeted, "I don't want to be here."
I saw your comment in the chat.
Yeah, I'm like first of all, like I'm
just here so I don't want to get fined.
Yeah,
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
I think I had a stroke halfway through whatever the hell it was that just went on. Like I have no clue. Like I wasn't paying attention. I didn't know what we were talking about or what was going on. I'm still stuck on. I'm like, I don't understand I don't understand why it's the Pirate parlay. Like I don't get the tie-in. Like I'm missing the.
So I need
that makes two of us.
This is what happened. Eric found this one voice that he could do like passively, and he was like, I have to shoehorn this into the show, and that's what I'm pretty sure the entire bit stemmed from.
You come up with something, okay? How about that? I was thinking like Nerd Ass Greg tells the future or something like that for all your futures bets. I don't know. I'm just trying to come up with things for you, okay?
My thing is to here's what it is. I'm gonna break some walls. My thing is to not come up with ideas. Instead, I wait for other people to present their ideas, and then I explain why they're terrible. That's
very nice of you.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah,
I when we were naming incorporating Pirates. I think it's fun.
Oh, thank you. Well, there we go. I don't have YouTube chat up for a reason right now. I don't have any desire to go into those streets at the moment. Whew, baby. Yeah, you know what? It is what it is. I'm just going to give you winners. You can take them or leave them, whatever.
Oh, there we
go. Do you like money? You'd be up, 1.8 units if you just listened to me yesterday. But, just let the Pirate voices go. Minus 1.5 Royals, over 7.5 deal on right. Parlay it plus 380 around. Enjoy. You're welcome.
Yeah, I would like to see you walk to the edge of the plank, and I will happily push you overboard. Happily.
See, isn't this fun? There's so many pirate puns.
You said me at gunpoint, me on a plank, like every scenario. I mean, it's just like, all right, whatever.
Okay, we have 1 minute, 1 minute, 2 segments really quickly. Eric, give us your make or break.
I mean, we got a Detroit Charlotte. That's the chalk answer. And I think because I am the chalk donkey, because I am chalk Kent, because I am chalk master flex, Charlotte, Detroit, make or break.
It's probably going to be the Kings for me. I really like Marvin Bagley a lot, so I find he's somebody that's really difficult to stay away from. He's also going to be really popular, but Marvin Bagley is somebody who's going to be in like the majority of my lineups today. So he's somebody who, if he gets into early foul trouble, if they're all of a sudden randomly going to go like, hey, you know who's in the rotation today? Hassan Whiteside. Like that would be something that would really kill me. So anything where Marvin Bagley doesn't play well.
Awesome. Greg, give us your fade of the day.
Fade of the day. I'm going to say the Cleveland Cavaliers just in general. I think that even though they're 12.5 points, they're 12.5 point underdogs, I don't think that's enough of a spread. Also, Colin Sexton, he's wildly overpriced on Fanduel and Draftkings with Darius Garland out. That's too expensive for me in a really tough matchup. So fading everything related to the Cavs.
I'm going to go Bam Adebayo, who, so on Fanduel, he's the second highest owned center. I'm going to have none.
Alrighty then. That's going to do it for us today. Guys, the camera stayed on. How many days in a row do I have to, have this go on for it to be a success?
Yeah, it's weird. It was Greg's camera this time around.
But it said my camera and it freaked me out. But I was like, wait, I'm still here. What's happening?
It's so good.
Also,
sharp.
But I also turned it off intentionally. So it wasn't like the camera malfunctioned. It worked as it was supposed to.
There we go.
Yes, indeed. All right.
And we're done.
And we're done. Thank you to Greg and Eric. Thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to like and hit the like button and subscribe. The deeper dive and live before lock are coming your way next on the same stream. So stay tuned. We'll see you guys tomorrow on the tip off. Bye.
And I'm leaving. Goodbye.
Oh.
I guess Basketball Reference just isn't working. Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive. I'm Dave Loughran. On the Twitters at Laffy_D, but you already knew that. Hit me with a follow. Say what's up, along with my guy Adam Scherer at ShipMyMoney DFS. Here to break down a 7-gamer on this wonderful Tuesday afternoon. What's going on, bro?
This might be the highest scoring 7-game slate that we've ever had. Like, this slate is insane.
Yesterday was 8 games, but we saw one almost score 300 total points in regulation.
Yeah, and there's a couple tonight that could play at that same pace. It's from a DFS standpoint, like I think tonight's going to be a lot of fun, probably really frustrating too, because like you're going to have really, really good teams that just like aren't even in contention to win anything because there's going to be so many points scored. But yeah, I think it's going to be really fun.
Yesterday though, and we have plenty of time to get into all of this. The Washington Wizards and Pacers going for a combined 295 points. And we laughed that the game had a 245.5 total, right? Now, granted, we both said this could soar over the total. Now, I thought maybe 260, maybe 265. The Pacers shot over 60% on the day, dude.
Yeah. And Russell Westbrook had 24 assists.
Yeah. And Josh and I talked about it this morning on the strategy show. The most remarkable part about all of that is he only shot 8 times and had, the Wizards shot over 60%, but the Pacers shot over 52% from 3. But Westbrook shot 8 times and still did what he did because he just doesn't need to score. And that's what you and I feel like we say at every single show. Westbrook could give you 10 to 15 points and still have 60 to 70 DraftKings points.
Yeah, or 80. I mean, it's insane. Like, yeah, I was like half paying attention to the game because I didn't really have good teams. But yeah, it was just crazy. Like, what do you have, like 21 assists through 3 quarters or something? Like, it was absurd.
I had to go to this class. Like, it's a pre-Jordan class for my daughter's baptism, which is coming up this week. So, as much as I wanted to just break the phone out and track games the whole time, I feel like that probably would have, looked poorly upon me and my wife. So I didn't. And then I get home and I'm looking at this because I shouldn't have done it driving either. Right. And I'm like, oh, great. That's awesome. Sabonis and Westbrook had huge games. Granted, they were like 60 and 50% on.
Right.
And then, things just went downhill from there. But we're getting into no man's land. We really are. Like, the amount of games that we're going to start seeing go nuclear and the amount of teams that are just going to start ruling players out. Again, excellent time to bet. I have noticed DraftKings, however, is a lot quicker on that trigger finger now. When that news breaks, you used to have a minute. Now you have like 25 seconds to get in there when big news breaks and they take it off the board. But just going back to what you said at the top, this could be the highest scoring night. And then tomorrow could be higher scoring than this.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting like tonight, just the way it sets up, because you have fast-paced teams playing each other. Like one of the games is probably going to be good, like the Milwaukee Brooklyn game. You have Golden State, New Orleans, running it back from last night. But then even like the Kings and the Thunder, both teams suck, but they both play fast and neither team defends. So you're going to get probably like 1 million points there. You have Detroit and Charlotte, who both play slow, but they just are both resting 15 players apiece. So there's a ton of value there. And even in some of these higher scoring games, there's value pieces where it's like they're not guys that we're going to point to and say they're good plays, but they're still $3,300 DFS guys. They're going to play 24 minutes in a game with 250 points. So there's just so many good plays on this slate, especially for only 7 games.
No doubt. Jeremiah says, Laffy, DeGrom not starting for the Mets. Wrong show, pal. But for anybody playing MLB and for anyone that watched the MLB Deeper Dive, I don't even know if any of that's real.
He's not. He was scratched.
Okay, so he was scratched. Jeremiah's coming correct, just wrong show. But no Jacob deGrom today. We got a good show ahead of us, 7 games. Let's dive into it. Before we do, less than 10% right now, I think, around that. a little more than 10% of people have liked this show. Hit that thumbs up before we get started. It is what keeps us alive. It's the fuel here at Awesemo, and we can't do it without you. We can't do it without you subscribing to the show and joining the community, joining the family here. We've built something great. Come along for the ride with us and enjoy it every single day of the week. So, I mean, at least get over 200. There we go. Easily over 200. Appreciate you guys. I should be like Josh and say, you guys are pathetic. Have you ever heard Josh ask for likes? I mean, it's effective, but it is the most condescending thing you'll ever hear in your life, but it works. Maybe we should start trying it. Anyway, Phoenix and Cleveland. You ready to do this?
Yeah, we can skip this one.
And the thing is, usually I ask you the preliminary question, is this a stars and scrubs or a balanced night? I don't think I need to do that.
No, I don't think you do either.
All right. So let's talk about Phoenix and Cleveland briefly, and then we can dive into some games that, much like yesterday, we spent, what did we spend? 35 minutes on the first 3 or 40 minutes on the first 4 games, and then 20 minutes on the last 4. Yeah. Phoenix is 12 and a half point favorite, 220 total. No Jay Crowder, Cameron Payne questionable. It's just a team. I feel like a broken record saying this almost every night. Yeah, well, you could go here, you could go here. Maybe a little Devin Booker. Chris Paul's okay, but for the most part, they're all reasonable. They're all accurately priced, and there's better priced players elsewhere.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. You know, like, can Devin Booker have a big game? Yeah. Can Chris Paul have a big game? But there's guys even in the mid-range that have the same ceiling, same upside, and you know, look a little bit better in their respective matchups. And looking at, you know, the boom bust tool, slates like this, I mean, it always comes in handy, but slates like this, it really can help to put things in perspective because, you know, for example, we have Devin Booker projected for 9% ownership, which on the one hand, it's like, oh, it's a 7-game slate and Devin Booker's sub 10% owned. That's, you know, pretty low for someone that can go out there and drop 50 actual points. But he's only showing up in the optimal lineup like 7.5% of the time. So he's owned pretty much where he should be. Same goes for Chris Paul. You know, there's just so many guys on the slate that are likely to put up big games that there's less appeal in looking to get a lot of these guys where it's just like, okay, yeah, I hope he does, but he's a lot less likely to. So, you know, of course, Booker can play well. Paul can play well. Ayton can play well. Ayton, I guess, maybe is a little bit more interesting because the center position is actually pretty weak tonight. There's just not that many good center options. Ayton, I think, you know, still not a priority because I think you're just going to end up spending the money elsewhere. But like at point guard and at shooting guard, there's just a lot of plays that look really, really good. At center, I think it might be a little bit easier to get to Ayton, but still kind of the same thing where it's just, you know, he's low owned, he's fine, but he's just not someone that's standing out.
Brad Levine asked me to shout his dad out. At first, I thought it said, shoot my dad. I said, I will do no such thing. But hey, what's up, Brad's dad? He said he's a Giants fan. How'd you like that Devontae Smith pick? That was a beauty, wasn't it? There's a video of this guy. He's drunk, and the pick comes through, and he starts punching holes in his wall. And his wife or his girl comes up to him and she goes, go upstairs, go to your room like it was a little child. I'll have to send it to you. It's the greatest thing ever. And he says, calm down. There's 3 holes punched into the wall over the Devontae Smith pick. That made me happy. And so essentially for Phoenix, there's nothing else there for you, right?
Yeah. So one thing to keep an eye on here that maybe does matter a little bit, Cameron Payne's questionable for this game. If he is ruled out, potentially you see more minutes for Torrey Craig. Payne didn't play last game. You didn't see anyone really added to the rotation. You just saw Torrey Craig play 30 minutes instead of like 24. You saw, you know, just a little bit more playing time for guys like that. So still wouldn't be a priority, but $3,800 Torrey Craig, if he plays 30 minutes, would be okay.
Okay. On the Cleveland side, you've got a little bit of ownership going to guys like Cedi Osman, and that ownership has come down throughout the day, which I think is we both probably would have predicted, right? Aside from that, you mentioned we could just kind of skip over this game. On Fanduel, a few guys in the double digits, but it's different. You got to play 2 guys at each position outside of center. On Draftkings, you have Cedi in the low double digits, and then pretty much everyone else getting nothing. I mean, how do you trust a guy in Kevin Love right now that literally attempted 0 shots the other day? His minutes have been all over the place, and it feels like at times he just has no interest in playing basketball. So I see that some of these prices might look relatively appealing. See that Darius Garland is sidelined, but Sexton's price point has adjusted for that. He's not cheap. Phoenix doesn't play bad defense. There's just so many spots here that make it really tough to really like anyone, despite somebody like Garland being out and maybe Kevin Love being kind of cheap.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to harp too much on Vegas here, but like the Cavs have a 104-point implied total on a slate where there's a bunch of teams with totals between, of like 115, 116 or more. In one of the slower paced games, there's just nothing but value. So it's just really tough to think that you're going to get much from this Cleveland team. With Garland being out, I think you can expect like 38 plus minutes from Sexton if this game's competitive. But like you said, he's priced up. Why? Outside of, just saying, well, he's low owned and he can do well, why would you be paying $8,300 for Colin Sexton instead of $7,100 for LaMelo Ball tonight, for example? That's just the first one that comes to mind. Chetty Osman at 5,500, I think, is kind of useful because he has averaged 36 minutes per game in the 4 starts he's made recently. But he's at a price point where, he certainly can fail. He's only a 0.8 fantasy point per minute guy. It's not a good matchup with Phoenix. So, I can see him getting into some lineups just as like a last piece in at that price point. But him and Sexton, I think, are the guys that are like similar to Booker and Paul, where, maybe I'll get them in some lineups out of 150, but they're not priorities. Jared Allen, I guess, kind of in that boat too. Beyond those guys, I don't really see much appeal to anything here.
All right, then let's get into a game that is far more appealing, even before a lot of this injury news came out. Like this morning, there was a lot to talk about with Charlotte already. The Hornets 4-point favorites. They were 7-point favorites earlier in the day, but you get news that Bridges is out, then PJ Washington's out. You already knew that Graham and Cody Martin were out, but add Bridges to the bunch, who has been playing quite well recently and has seen his price point shoot through the roof. Take another starter and PJ Washington off the floor. But the big question here, it's not as much as a question, as much of a statement that you are welcome to respond to, is LaMelo Ball is a really good play at $7,100 on DraftKings and at $6,200 on Fanduel. Adam, not only did he return from a non-lower body injury, non-COVID injury where he needed conditioning, he played back-to-backs, first and second leg of a back-to-back, 28 and 30 minutes. And now there's no Graham, there's no PJ Washington, there's no Bridges, there's no Gordon Hayward. And his price is egregiously low given what we should be expecting from him tonight.
Yeah, you had him in that first game back. He's one of 2 players on the slate that has exceeded his minutes limits that we were expecting coming back. In that first game back, you had James Borrego say that he was going to play like short 5-6 minute stints. He played about 28 minutes in that game. Then he came back, like you said, played the second half of a back-to-back, played 30 minutes, didn't get his last stint, would have probably played 32 or 33. Now you're getting him, without Devontae Graham, without Miles Bridges, without PJ Washington. Like it's a very shorthanded team here. I don't really have any reason to think he's limited at all. I'm not saying I think he plays 38 minutes like maybe he would have beforehand. He could play 38 minutes, but even if you assume he plays like 33 or 34, he ends up looking like one of the best options on the slate. He's got a 34% assist percentage without Hayward this year. Usage rates at 28%. Averages like one and a third fantasy points per minute. There's nothing really for me to dislike about LaMelo Ball at this price tag.
Terry Rozier is 6,000 on FanDuel and 7,300 on DraftKings. Now, he's still getting ownership on both sites, but predictably so, 6K on FanDuel is going to bring a little bit more attention to him. I know he's not LaMelo Ball. I know his production kind of has been a bit erratic this season, and LaMelo, ever since he started getting 30-plus minutes a game at this current price, it would just be a lock. But Rozier is at least got to be somewhat appealing to you, right? Against the Detroit team that is also resting everyone again, including Josh Jackson, or not necessarily resting, either resting or sitting for injury purposes. They're down a ton of players once again.
Yeah, I think that, Rozier doesn't have the same shine the Ball does, like you were saying, but he's still a good option here. I mean, if I had to bet on someone to lead this team in minutes tonight, it would be Rozier. And while he's not the same level of producer like LaMelo Ball, he's still probably going to play like 35 to 40% of his minutes without Ball on the floor. And when he's played without Ball or Hayward on the floor this year, his assist percentage is up around 28%, usage rates up in that same ballpark. And then, playing alongside LaMelo, he's still productive enough with a mid-20s usage percentage. So I think Terry Rozier, he's not the priority that LaMelo is, but he's still getting ownership. He still deserves that ownership. I think he plays a lot of minutes, and he's, still a fantasy point per minute guy.
Caleb Martin's minimum salary, Malik Monk's in that low 4K range, Jalen McDaniels mid 4K range. As it stands right now on DraftKings, and we updated ownership probably like 40 minutes ago, should get another one relatively soon. You have 5 guys projected for north of 20% ownership. On FanDuel, you get 3 north of 28%. and then a couple down there trickling in like Monk and Martin in the 15% range. So aside from LaMelo, who is the clear alpha in this position, and then Terry Rozier, who we would look to next, there is a lot of value on this team. How do you prioritize them? And in the same breath, we had a question from chat that I think is relevant for this situation. How many Hornets are you willing to play in tournaments together in the same lineup?
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting question on this slate. So to answer that first, I still plan on only most likely playing three max from any team. And the reason is, so on a lot of slates, if you had the Hornets looking like this, I would say, okay, maybe I'll go to 4 because there's a lot of cheap guys and they project so well. But there's so many teams that look like that tonight. Like you have a ton of value on Detroit. You have a ton of value on Sacramento. You have cheap guys on Oklahoma City. You have, 2 really good fantasy games in the Brooklyn game and the Golden State game. I still don't really want to just jam in, all of Charlotte here. And it's kind of reinforced, like when I crunched my top lineups before the show, most of my top lineups are still only getting like 3 Hornets. The 3 Hornets varied by lineup because so many of them are top plays, but it just kind of reinforced that like there's a lot of really good plays elsewhere too. So I'll still probably keep it to 3. I definitely wouldn't go more than 4. As far as the priorities go, I mean, Caleb Martin coming in at dead minimum. I'm assuming he slides into the starting lineup. You have Cody Martin out in addition to Bridges, in addition to Washington. Caleb Martin's a reasonably productive fantasy player. He's averaged 0.8 DraftKings points per minute this year. I don't see any reason that you wouldn't think he's playing 30 plus minutes as long as he starts tonight. And he covers the small forward position, which is relatively weak. So he looks really good. Jalen McDaniels, more affordable on FanDuel than DraftKings, but he's a good play on either site. 0.8 DraftKings points per minute as well. I would assume you get 34 to 36 from him. And then Malik Monk, another guy that missed a bunch of time, but he played 27 minutes last game. Granted, the reason he played 27 minutes was garbage time, but I think the big takeaway is that he was physically able to. Borrego didn't stop him. And so there's no real reason to me that you're not getting 27, 28 minutes from Monk tonight, who's a productive player. So I think all 5 of those guys look really good. And then you get into the center position.
So Malik Monk missed a full calendar month, came back, and also, along with LaMelo Ball, played each of the back-to-back. That, to me, like you said, it gives you comfort, at least knowing that he's going to not be limited by anything outside of James Borrego deciding he doesn't want to play him. And that's not something I have the energy to try and predict right now.
Yeah, exactly. There's enough guessing at what James Borrego is going to do when we get to the center position.
All right. So you remember last time when we were without PJ Washington and James Borrego said, he'd start this guy. He'd start one of the 2 at both guard and center. Do we have a scenario here where against Detroit, you have Isaiah Stewart likely getting the start? Do you think one of Bismack Biyombo, or do you think it's Biyombo that starts here? Because I don't necessarily see Cody Zeller's played 20 minutes in the last week.
I think it's Vernon Carey.
You think Carey gets the start again? Okay.
I kind of don't want that to be the case because I think that's the trickiest scenario. But yeah, so I think Biyombo or Carey are the 2 likeliest. Zeller would be the most surprising to me, though it's certainly still possible. The way that I'm viewing it right now, and we'll get at least some clarity when we do get the starting lineup. If Biyombo starts, I think he's a good value. I will say that I still don't think he's as valuable on this slate as he would be on a lot of slates. Like he's 3K, he would probably play 24 to 26 minutes. He'd be a good play, but you just don't need the value quite as much as you do on a lot of slates. But I would feel relatively comfortable going to him if he starts. If Vernon Carey starts, I kind of have no idea what the hell to do because Vernon Carey has started 4 games recently. PJ Washington was out for one of those games, and Vernon Carey played 35 minutes. Then PJ Washington came back, but they kept Carey in the starting lineup. He played 3, 7, and 15 minutes. Part of that was due to foul trouble. Part of it was due to the fact that you had PJ Washington back. So if Vernon Carey starts, I think the range of his minutes is really wide. Like you could get 18 minutes for Carey, 18 for Biyombo, 12 for Zeller. That wouldn't be surprising. You could get 26 for Carey, 22 for Biyombo, and Zeller doesn't step on the floor. That wouldn't really be surprising. So I think that would create like a really volatile situation where you would want to have some Vernon Carey in tournaments, but you would want to probably also not have your entire night riding on him. If Cody Zeller starts, I would say you probably just play Zeller in almost every lineup because whereas Biyombo, if he plays 24 or 26 minutes, he projects for like 21 or 22 points, which is good, but not not great. If Zeller plays 24, 26 minutes, he's probably scoring 30 plus fantasy points at 3K. So if Biyombo starts, I would say Biyombo's fine. Maybe roll the dice on a little bit of Zeller in tournaments, because even in 16 minutes, he could be okay. But if Biyombo starts, I would say Biyombo's okay. If Carey starts, I think he's risky, but a reasonable tournament play. If Zeller starts, I think he's just someone that you play pretty much everywhere.
Well, here's the good news, right? This is the one positive aspect of this slate. Many of the other times we've dealt with Charlotte in this situation, it's been a 7:30 or 8 o'clock start Eastern time. This, along with Phoenix and Cleveland, is a 7 p.m. lock. It is the first game to lock. So we will have this news. We don't necessarily need to harp on it and try and figure out which one it's going to be. Live Before Lock can do that for you when the news breaks to break down the true analysis. I mean, you just did it right now. You gave, if this happens, this is where I'm going. If this happens, this is where I go. But we should have it before lock. Well, we will have it before lock. And that's important for a night like tonight.
Yeah, for sure. If this game were like a 9 o'clock game, it would just make the whole slate miserable pretty much.
Let's talk about Detroit. You know, Dwayne Casey once again trying to make this slate miserable. Jackson didn't start yesterday, played 21 minutes. Now he's out of this one. He's got a sore tooth. So, listen, tooth pain can
I hadn't actually seen what the injury was.
What?
I hadn't actually seen what the injury
sore
was.
Tooth. Tooth pain can be rough.
Tooth pain sucks. It just, like, that injury just sounds so perfect for what the Pistons are doing.
It's definitely fun. And like, maybe tooth pain would have sounded, a sore tooth just makes it sound odd.
Yeah, you know, like root canal or something. Like, okay. But we're not gonna play Josh tonight. He's got a sore tooth. It's just like, you're just making shit up now.
It does. I mean, listen, I remember one time driving to my wife's house, a girlfriend at the time, and I started getting this tooth pain back in my top wisdom tooth, and I stopped at a grocery store to get what's the stuff that you put on the tooth? You rub it on the tooth that never does shit. Orajel, right? And maybe some other stuff. And I got out of the car, and the moment my foot hit the ground, I actually fell down. It hurt so bad. So I get tooth pain. I understand it. It's brutal, but yeah, maybe just like mouth pain would have sounded a little bit more appropriate. I remember we've had some players that are out for like a week from a dental operation.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm just picturing it like they benched Josh Jackson yesterday, and he's pissed off, and he walks into Dwayne Casey like, "Yo, I can't play tomorrow. My tooth hurts."
My tooth hurts. Yeah, ate a pretzel wrong.
Right.
Yeah. No Jeremy Grant, no Mason Plumlee, no Josh Jackson, no Corey Joseph. Hamidou Diallo is questionable, got the start last game. And Frank Jackson, who played huge minutes off the bench yesterday in that 7-point loss, 35 minutes to be exact. He's also questionable with a sore ear. So they're just throwing.
Wait, what?
No, he's got a quad, bruised right quad. That'd be great if they just started throwing stuff out there, though.
Well, it's like the Cavs the other day when they picked up 3 concussions overnight.
Yeah. They all fell getting off the bus.
Right.
What are you doing with Cleveland? Because this is a little bit different than we've seen in the past with Josh
Detroit.
Jackson out. He's always been the guy.
Yeah, Detroit. So this is a team that like I haven't even bothered to project yet because again, you know, fortunately a 7 o'clock game. But if Diallo and Frank Jackson are both out, I'm pretty sure they have 8 guys. Like they have Isaiah Stewart, Sadiq Bey, Hayes, Domboya, Lee, Cook, Okafor, and Servetus. So that would change everything entirely because, you know, you'd have 8 guys here and it would make them look even more appealing than they already do. If we assume that Jackson and Diallo are in for now, then, you know, you are getting more minutes opened up. Josh Jackson played 21 minutes last night, but you're also getting more usage because he's about a 28% usage guy. So Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, we know these are reasonable options anyway. They don't stand out quite as much on tonight's slate just because there are so many other really good plays. But I think you're likely to get mid-30s in minutes from Bey. Stewart probably plays 30 to 32 minutes, and he's averaged almost 1.2 Draftkings points per minute as a starter this year. So they both look fine. Frank Jackson's minutes are solidified if Josh Jackson's out. He played 35 minutes last night. I'd expect somewhere in that range again. Hamidou Diallo played 26 minutes last night. I would expect somewhere in that range again, if not, you know, a couple more if he's able to play. Killian Hayes hasn't played a back-to-back yet, but he's not on the injury report, so I assume he's playing. I assume you're getting 28 to 30 minutes from him, which makes him look reasonable. Saban Lee, I think, is the one guy where, like, if Frank Jackson gets ruled out or if Amadou Diallo gets ruled out, it gets interesting because you haven't really seen Saban Lee play minutes alongside Killian Hayes. But if you take another one of those two guards out, I would assume that they try that for at least a few minutes. And if you start getting 22 minutes or so from Saban Lee at 3K, he's just another 3K guy that you can plug into lineups.
Just to spend a couple extra seconds here on Isaiah Stewart. The production wasn't great yesterday, but he played another 30 plus minutes, and we've seen him produce some really big games in these situations. Over his last 4 games, he's averaging 14 rebound chances per game. Mason Plumlee played one of them. Like the opportunities are there. He has 3+ blocks in 4 straight, 4+ stocks in 4 straight. I say this only to mention that the guy does have upside, right? Like he does have a pretty nice ceiling for someone at his salary. How much do you feel comfortable getting to of Isaiah Stewart today if he gets another 30+ minutes against this Charlotte front court, which is almost certainly going to be undersized if they start with Carey? Biyombo's fine, but he's not exactly the best rebounder.
Yeah, I do think he has a high ceiling here. And he started 7 games this year without Grant. You've seen the usage rate jump a couple points to 18%. The rebounding percentage goes from about 19.5 to 21%. So he benefits there as well. The thing that makes it difficult, so on the one hand, like I said earlier with DeAndre Ayton, the center position is actually not that strong tonight. But the thing that I think does make it difficult is he's the same price at 6,300 as Rashawn Holmes is in the Sacramento OKC game. I think that spot is more appealing, but I think that's also kind of the consensus. Right now we have Holmes getting like twice as much ownership as Stewart. So I wouldn't have any issue with Stewart in tournaments. I would expect to be getting to someone else in cash games though.
Okay. So priorities from the Detroit side right now, assuming Jackson and I assume Diallo plays. I couldn't tell you about Frank Jackson, but assuming both of them are in.
Assuming they're both in, I wouldn't say there's a priority in terms of like guys that I would expect, any one guy that I expect to get into a ton of lineups, like for example, Charlotte. But I think it's more so a team where like there's going to be one guy. Most of my lineups, or a lot of my lineups, will have like one guy from Detroit. It kind of depends, on what the rest of the lineup looks like, whether that's Stewart or Bay or Jackson or Hayes or Diallo. Diallo probably would be my favorite play because he's like the one guy, or one of the only guys that isn't really priced up yet. He's still only 4K on DraftKings, and we know he can be a productive player. But I wouldn't say that there's one guy in particular that I'd prioritize.
Okay. Then let's talk about the Brooklyn Nets and Milwaukee Bucks. Really the first game that's projected to see a ton of scoring. These two teams faced each other just a couple days ago, saw 230+ points in regulation. Both teams healthy for the most part outside of the obvious, James Harden and such. But they're 1.5-point dogs in Milwaukee, 242 total, Adam. So this could be a shootout once again. Wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. How do we approach guys like Irving and Durant today on a night where you have Luka, you have Giannis on the other side, you have Steph Curry in this back-to-back at the Smoothie King Center against New Orleans, and a few other high-priced options that are going to be in contention and in the conversation as well?
Yeah, so I think Kevin Durant is the one that really stands out here from the Brooklyn side, especially on DraftKings. He's only 9,300, 10-3 on Fanduel, still a very strong play there. But he's coming off a game on Sunday against Milwaukee where he played 39.9 minutes in regulation. So no concerns over minutes limits for him anymore. He's averaged 1.5 fantasy points per minute in the games he's played with Irving and without Harden this year, which is of course really good. This game has a 242-point total, so it's in the same ballpark as that Indiana-Washington game we saw last night. I don't have anything negative to say about Durant. He's getting a lot of ownership. He deserves it. I think he looks like one of the best pay-up options tonight. Kyrie is pretty interesting to me in tournaments. I haven't built tournament lineups yet, so I don't know how much I'll get to. I could certainly see where it's difficult to get to him. But just like in theory, it makes a lot of sense because he's still so talented. Is he likely to take a backseat to Durant? Yes. He's averaged about 1.25 fantasy points per minute in these games with Durant and without Harden this year, but that's an average. That doesn't mean it's going to happen tonight. You certainly, if you played this game 100 times, would see some games where Kyrie just takes over and, it's a night where you really want him in your lineups. And he's $300 more expensive than Durant on DraftKings, which is just going to make it really, really difficult for people to say, oh, I'm going to play Kyrie instead of Durant. So that's one spot where, I think it's at least worth considering. I'm hoping I get some of that in my tournament lineups just because I think it is a good option. But when you're talking in terms of probability, I think Durant's clearly the guy here.
Okay. Yeah. 33% right now on DraftKings. On FanDuel, Kevin Durant around 25% at 10,300. The rest of the team though precipitously drops off as they have every other night when at least 2 of these top 3 guys are active. And I don't see anything else of viability on a slate like this where we already have a boatload of value.
Yeah, I don't see anything else that stands out as a priority. I will say, though, that in games like this that are likely to be close and so high scoring, a lot of times the secondary pieces don't really project that well, but one of them just runs into a big game. I mean, there's going to be so many possessions here. So there's nothing, like DeAndre Jordan started and played 24 minutes on Sunday. Nick Claxton was available for that game. Steve Kerr said he wasn't going to play. Not sure what his status is yet tonight. I'm expecting like 20 to 24 minutes from Jordan if he starts. But, guys like him, Jeff Green, Joe Harris, they certainly have upside at their salary given just the pace of this game. But, again, it kind of comes back to the slate too, where it's just like, do I want to play Joe Harris because he might make it a couple extra 3-pointers in this game? Or do I want to look to someone from a team that's playing at a really fast pace and missing half their guys?
Yeah, exactly. On Milwaukee, Giannis Antetokounmpo is... How do you not love him today? We discussed this at length on the strategy show. Check it out every day of the week, 10 a.m. Eastern time. It is a great show. You'll enjoy it. He's positioned so nicely in this matchup. And if you watched any of that game, he just destroyed DeAndre Jordan on every possession that the 2 of them were out there. And I can't help but look at this again and see a very similar situation shaping up. I'm curious, though. Can Steve Nash go back to DeAndre Jordan, or does he have any options here? Because they don't have any recourse for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Like, Kevin Durant's a good defender, but he is not exactly the type of player that is built to stop someone like Giannis.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact that Claxton's been out for COVID and then didn't play at all last game makes me think it's not too likely that they just turn Claxton loose here. So yeah, I think it's a great spot for Giannis. I mean, the pace of the game is great. We always like him in back and forth games because he's so good in transition. But yeah, he shouldn't have any trouble getting to the rim here either. Everything sets up really well for him. There's plenty of value on the slate, of course. So yeah, no problems with Giannis. Absolutely love getting to him here. I think, pairing him with Durant will be pretty easy. I think it'll be pretty popular, but obviously they correlate positively too.
Draymond Green is questionable now.
Yeah,
Eric
it's going to be a fun one.
What's up?
I said, yeah, that's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, that could be a problem. Eric Pascal out. So, all right. Kelly Oubre also out of that one. We'll get to that game shortly. I've just been mostly kind of Giannis or nothing from this Bucks team recently. And I think one of the reasons is the price points on so many of the Bucks not named Giannis are up. Like Holiday and Middleton are both north of 8K on DraftKings. How do you get to them on a day like today? And if the answer is you can, tell me how and how it makes sense. Because the only thing I can think of is super fast paced game, really projected high scoring game, bad Brooklyn defense, bottom 7 Brooklyn defense on the year. One of these guys not named Giannis might just have a huge game because it's the NBA and they're both good, borderline elite players.
Yeah, that is the answer. It's that in tournaments, you have to keep in mind that you're trying to mix the average outcome with, the chances of them exceeding that. Like, you're never going to win a tournament because your lineup meets what you expected them to do. You're going to win tournaments because guys outperform that. And
wait, you mean projected fantasy points aren't supposed to be dead on accurate to the number?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's kind of where that's where talent comes in. That's where usage comes in. And, when you look at guys like Holiday and Middleton, it's kind of the same thing with Kyrie Irving on the other side. As far as their average production goes, they're a little bit more expensive than they should be. But this is a game where players in general in this game are more likely to put up big games than they would if this were just like a crawling, slow-paced game. And so, in lineups where you don't have Giannis, it makes some sense to look to these guys. Like, looking at the boom bust tool again to kind of put it in the context, you have Chris Middleton on DraftKings getting about 4.8% ownership, 5.7% chance of being in the optimal lineup. Drew Holiday, 2% ownership, 3.7% chance of being in the optimal lineup. So what that's telling you is that they're not in the optimal lineup that much. And that goes back to the fact that they are a little bit overpriced. And, there's so much opportunity cost on the slate as well. But they're also getting even less ownership than that. So a lot of times what ends up happening for me, or at least ideally what happens for me, is players like that end up being the players that in my tournament lineup where I have, LaMelo Ball and I have Caleb Martin and I have Marvin Bagley, like these popular guys, I'll just end up with Drew Holiday or Chris Middleton and hope that, that 2% guy scores 60 fantasy points, and that's what separates my team.
Okay. Right. And that's the only reason I can think of it. But, even as I thought through it while I was speaking to you, right, you could see the gears start to turn, because that is the way you're winning tournaments these days. And could Chris Middleton or Holiday go for a huge game tonight? Yes. I guess the last thing I'll ask you on Milwaukee, because I think this is important, is at their price points, though, with Giannis out there, likely playing big minutes, even under Budenholzer in a big game, right, between pretty much the two best teams in the East. What do we want from an $8,400? What do we need from an $8,400 Middleton or an $8,100 Holiday playing alongside Giannis? Would be the only thing. They're both over 8K on FanDuel too.
Yeah, I mean, you want those guys really getting like 55 plus, which sounds crazy. And again, it goes back to why they're such a low probability play. It's just, that you have to think in the context of your entire lineup too. There's a lot of very, very, very good chalk on this slate. Like when you look, it actually stands out if you look at the top of the boom bust tool, where you're getting guys with like 50, 47, 35% ownership. And even though there's so many good plays on the slate, they're still in the optimal lineup like that percentage of the time. So it's not even like they're being over-owned. So it's going to really be a kind of difficult balancing act, getting lineups that have these top plays, but then also finding ways to be different. And so that's, kind of where I expect those guys to come in handy. And I don't anticipate, like I'm actually playing 150 lineups tonight, which I haven't been doing a whole lot of recently. I don't anticipate either Middleton or Drew being someone that I look and I'm like, oh, I have 30%, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if, they're 2-3% owned, and I end up, with 9-10% or something like that.
All right. Anything else from Milwaukee outside of the big three?
Kind of this, I mean, DiVincenzo's cheap, but I don't think he's really needed. He's just, he probably plays around 30 minutes. He averages about 0.85 Draftkings points per minute. So he's fine, but I wouldn't expect to prioritize him either.
Okay. Dallas and Miami. Let's keep this one going. Hey, there's free content on the site, free premium content at awesemo.com today. For those of you that may not be free or may not be premium subscribers and you want to check out everything we've got going on, NBA player rankings, MLB top stack tool. Adam, I think you would agree the MLB top stack tool, one of the greatest tools out there. Top golfer tool, which is fantastic. PG or NHL player and stack rankings. We have all of these tools for every sport too, right? We rotate through premium content to make some of it free to you each day so you can see what we're working with. But we have the top golfer tool, but we also have the top pitchers tool. We have the top stacks tool. We have the top fighter tool, top driver tool for NASCAR, all of that stuff. And top stacks tool for NFL. All of these cross over to all of the sports that we offer. And ownership, same thing. Player projections, same thing. Lineup builder, fantasy cruncher add-on, all of these sports, right? Integrated into Awesemo's platform. You can use fantasy cruncher straight from there, using our ownership, using our projections to build your lineups. All of that stuff we've got. All the best premium articles you're going to find as well. Adam's free deeper dive too, right on the homepage, free every day. It's the best thing you're going to find. But if you want to check that out, these tools built by the #1 player, Alex Baker, Awesemo himself, built and used. That's important. Used by the #1 ranked DFS player out there with input from so many other great players like Steve Buzzard. You know him as the Colts. Tom Kennedy, CEO of Awesemo, always taking down big wins. Sean Zahn, Eddie behind the scenes, who's an absolute DFS stud. You don't hear much about him because he's behind the scenes, but he's always winning. So many of these guys putting in work. Check it out. Monthly, weekly. You can do an express weekly for less than $4 a month. You want to go all access annual, make a real investment out of it, get every sport for every year. You don't even need to know these sports as long as you have access to the tools and you know, more importantly, how to use them to your advantage. Go to awesemo.com/join. Check out everything we have to offer. And if you have questions, hit me up on Twitter. My DMs are open. Might not be a wise decision, but they are open. I'm happy to help you out with any of those questions. All right, Dallas and Miami. Let's get through this one. I don't assume that this is your favorite game on the slate, Adam.
It is not. Over the last month, Miami is dead last in pace. Dallas is 27th. There's obviously a few plays here that are good, like Luka. But yeah, it's definitely not one of my favorite games.
Dallas Mavericks are 3.5-point dogs to the Heat. 216 total. Kristaps Porzingis is doubtful. Maxi Kleber is questionable. Can we look towards anyone from Dallas? And is Luka deserving of this low ownership that he's getting right now?
Yes, but it also makes him pretty appealing in tournaments, I think. I don't feel anywhere near as good about Luka as I do about Giannis, or as I do about Durant, or as I do about Steph Curry. But everyone shares that opinion, and he's still the third highest projected player on the slate behind Curry and Giannis. So, yeah, you have to pay for him, but there is value. The fact that he is, on DraftKings, $100 more expensive than Giannis, $400 more than Curry, is going to make him more difficult to click into lineups. And so, right now we have him projected for 17% ownership with a 20% chance of being in the optimal lineup. So a little bit under owned, certainly not someone you're going to feel good about, but still, one of the highest upside players in the league, one of the best per minute fantasy producers. I don't like him per se, like relative to sometimes I'd absolutely love Luka and just want to get him into like every lineup. But on those slates, he ends up being 50 and 60% owned. So it's pretty unusual to have a slate with only 7 games where Luka Doncic is a contrarian play. But it's a spot where, I think you can take advantage of in tournaments. Just understand that, he is facing the Heat and there's a reason that he is lower owned than Giannis and Curry.
The rest of Dallas, any impact here from the absence of or projected absence from Luka? Or I'm sorry, Kristaps Porzingis and maybe Maxi Kleber?
If Kleber plays, I don't think there's much to get to here. If Kleber sits, that's opening up like 28 minutes in the front court. There's a variety of different ways Rick Carlisle could approach it, which is never a fun situation. But it would, if Kleber sits, I think Willie Cauley-Stein at minimum salary would start to be mildly interesting to me in large field tournaments, just because recently we have seen games where he gets like 24, 26 minutes off the bench. It's certainly a risky situation. It's not something I would put all my money on tonight. But if Kleber sits, Cauley-Stein would be the guy that I start to kind of look at a little bit.
What if we get a Boban start?
God, I hope that doesn't happen.
Why, man? All he needs is 20 or 15 minutes to get it done.
Yeah, because I don't feel like late swapping all my lineups to get Boban in.
Exactly, right? Dwight Powell, that's kind of the thing about this team is even they can run it deep. Like we've seen it happen before where Porzingis has been out and Kleber's been out and Bowen plays and Dwight Powell plays and Willie Cauley-Stein plays and just a ton of these different players get minutes. Maybe Nikola Melli comes in and gets some run. Like there's no predicting what Carlisle is going to do here. And that's what makes it a lot more difficult.
They played 12 players in the first half last game.
Case in point.
Yeah.
Miami Heat. Not all that much prettier. Oladipo's out. Tyler Hero remains out alongside him. Just a really slow-paced game. And the trouble here, you heard us talk about it this morning, is the Miami Heat have been pretty awful offensively this season, but they're good defensively, and Dallas plays at an ultra-slow pace. So it really just is the recipe for a pretty awful game altogether. If you were to run this 100 times, you're probably not getting a ton of these guys in your win or in your optimal lineups.
Yeah, agreed. It's kind of the same thing it's been for a while with Miami. Jimmy Butler, if you somehow find a way to get him into lineups, he should be low owned. He is a good fantasy option, but I think it's just really, really difficult to prioritize him. Like on Fanduel, where normally he has a little bit more appeal because you have to roster 2 small forwards, he's only $700 less expensive than Durant in a game with a total 30 points higher. And a better fantasy producer on top of that. On DraftKings, there's enough flexibility that you just don't have to really use a small forward at all. Definitely not to pay up for one. The one spot that stands out on either site, I think, is Bam Adebayo on FanDuel at 8,300. It's just not the best position. I think, especially if, for example, like if Vernon Carey starts and Bismack Biyombo doesn't, so that would kind of take the $3,500 pay down option out. Like you look at the center position, and it's just kind of a mediocre price tag on Jared Allen, or a good price tag on Holmes, a decent one on Ayton, but like just not a lot that would stand out there. So Bam Adebayo on FanDuel is probably my favorite, or definitely my favorite piece from Miami anywhere.
Ty Johnson, feisty, says, take the word betting picks out of the title, 5 exclamation points, then declares us as frauds. Well, if you missed the entire first hour, then I guess I know where you're coming from, but lots of betting picks on the first hour. Then we talk DFS. Then we go live before lock. That's kind of what we do around here, fella.
We did Biyombo starting.
Okay, Bismack Biyombo getting the nod. Spot start. Ball, Rozier, Caleb Martin, McDaniels, and Biyombo. Any thoughts you want to hit on that?
Yeah, it puts Biyombo in play. Like I still don't want to say I feel good because for one, it's Bismack Biyombo, and for two, Borrego still has options here. But it just makes me feel better that you're going to get probably like 24 to 26 minutes from Biyombo at minimum salary.
Got a super chat from Chad Freeland. Says, give us the top center plays for FanDuel. No more thumbs up if you're wrong. Well, we'll really miss that, but thank you for the super chat. Who are your top center options on FanDuel?
Adebayo, Holmes, Ayton, and I think if you want to just punt the position because it's not that good and go to Biyombo, that's fine.
Okay, there you have it, Chad. Anything else for Miami?
No.
Golden State, New Orleans. Diving into this one, plus 1.5. Golden State Warriors, dogs on the road, 234.5 total. No Kelly Oubre. Jordan, I'm adding this now since we got the Draymond Green news during the show. If you want to throw that in there, Draymond Green is questionable now. Eric Pascal is out. What happens if Draymond Green ends up sitting tonight? And does that actually, do you think that helps Stephen Curry from an assist rate standpoint, or are they just so dismal outside of Curry for the most part that unless he's scoring and shooting on most of his possessions, the assists aren't going to come anyway?
That's kind of what I was gonna say. Was like, who the hell is he passing the ball to?
Yeah,
but
Kent Bazemore.
Right. I mean, like he'd have it in his hands more. I don't think that they're gonna ask Juan Toscano-Anderson to take on Draymond Green's role. But if Green sits, they actually end up being pretty shorthanded here because they're already without Pascal, they're without Lee, they're without Oubre. So you're already getting like 30 plus minutes from Juan Toscano-Anderson normally. I think if Green sits, you get more minutes from Kevon Looney. They would probably just leave him out there for like 30 minutes instead of pulling him at 22 to 24. I think that it would solidify Toscano-Anderson playing like 32 to 34. And I think you probably get Jordan Poole getting like 26 minutes, which would be mildly appealing in tournaments. All that being said, I hope Draymond plays because I actually like him.
Draymond's throwing back some vintage games recently, and you have to really
he went nuts last night.
Yeah, you have to really appreciate that. So he's one, he's the poor man's Westbrook, if you think about it. In the sense that very what's that?
Very poor.
In the sense that, ready? Not many players can score 7 real points and give you 60 fantasy points.
Yeah, it's like all of his rates across the board are lower than Westbrook's, but it's the same kind of thing where, occasionally guys like that will disappoint because they're not high usage guys and their teammates miss shots or whatever. But normally they actually give you a pretty solid floor because you're not relying on them scoring. You're relying on them grabbing rebounds and picking up defensive stats, which he does at a high rate, and picking up assists, which he does at a very high rate. So, a pretty high floor. It increases the ceiling too, because in those games where he does score 10 to 12 points, you have a chance at a triple double. So, if he does play, he's still pretty inexpensive. I think it will still be tough to prioritize him, across the entire slate because there's so many really good plays, but you really only have to look back to last night to see how high his ceiling is for a 7K price tag.
Let's talk a little bit more about Stephen Curry here and just where he slots in among the rest of these top tier players. Yesterday, this is not only the same matchup in the same spot, but it's also the second of a back-to-back. He went 8 for 18 from threes, attempted 17 plus threes in 3 straight, 41 points. Just a huge game from Steph Curry, and the 3-point bonus is really valuable on DraftKings. How much do you like him tonight compared to some of the other top tier players? And can we get spots where Giannis and Steph are in the same lineup, or Steph and Kevin Durant easily slot into the same lineups?
Yeah, I don't think it's difficult at all. The lineup I put together before the show has Durant and Curry. You wouldn't have to do a whole lot to get, from Durant to Giannis or from Curry to Giannis is $200 or $300. So I think Curry looks really good. I think he's the second highest projected guy tonight behind Giannis. Really good matchup again. New Orleans plays at a fast pace. They're not particularly strong defensively. The big thing for Curry is Kelly Oubre being out. Like, for a couple of reasons. For one, Oubre being out just increases the usage percentage for Curry. In the games without Oubre, he has a 39% usage rate. Overall this year, without Weissman or Oubre on the floor, he's at 37.4%. But also, Oubre being out just makes this offense more efficient. Oubre has really hurt them this year, and it just benefits the entire offense, which by extension benefits Curry. So I don't expect him to continue producing 1.7 fantasy points per minute like he has with Oubre out, because he has shot 6% better from 3 than he has overall this season. But he's still going to get those opportunities. And anytime you're giving one of the most efficient shooters in the history of the NBA a 37% usage rate, you're going to expect big things.
Anybody else for Golden State?
Yeah. Wiggins, Bazemore, I think are both pretty decent options just based on the minutes played. They definitely lost some appeal as value opened up, but Wiggins is likely to play 36 plus minutes here. He's like a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy, so that's not super appealing, but it still makes him project pretty well in a fast-paced game. And the same goes for Bazemore, who should play 30 to 32 minutes. He's priced up enough where I don't think it's a priority, but he still, projects for around 30 fantasy points here.
The New Orleans side is a little bit less clear than it was earlier today because Lonzo Ball's been playing huge minutes and now he's questionable. And not only is Ball questionable, where last time he was out, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Josh Hart, they all got extended minutes, but those guys have been out for a while now. So let's actually start here. If Lonzo happens to sit, who benefits the most in this rotation? Like Kira Lewis Jr. could get some decent run. And then you've got guys, who else are we looking at here that can fill the void at the point guard position for a guy that's been getting a ton of minutes? Of course, Eric Bledsoe benefits. Whether you love the guy or hate the guy, Eric Bledsoe is probably going to see increased opportunity as a facilitator.
Yeah, I think Bledsoe would benefit just because he'd have the ball in his hands more. Ingram would get more assist opportunities as well. My guess is that Najee Marshall would start. I actually have some interest in
and
Marshall.
And just slot Bledsoe to the one?
Yeah. I have some interest in Marshall, actually, even if Lonzo plays, but of course it's kind of taken a backseat as the slate's developed. But yesterday we actually saw the Pelicans close both halves with a small lineup where, instead of Jackson Hayes, they were going with Zion at the 5 and with Najee Marshall in the lineup. So if you were to get 28 minutes from this guy at 4,200, there's some value there anyway. And I think if Lonzo sits, it just becomes really likely that you're getting 30 plus minutes. I think you would see it trickle down and James Johnson play more minutes as well at 3,500. And then Kira Lewis wasn't really in the rotation yesterday, but normally he's been backing up Lonzo. I would expect that you're getting, 22 minutes or so from him if Lonzo sits. So, at 3K, it's worth a shot, but there's, a lot of very good value today.
But Bledsoe would definitely be the guy who stands out pretty significantly here. Listen, if you're running queries with Bledsoe on and Lonzo off, I think it's important that you have to consider Zion and Ingram here too, because Bledsoe's played almost 300 minutes without Lonzo, with Zion and Ingram on the floor. I'm not saying you don't see some staggered situations, but he's a 0.65 DraftKings points per minute this year.
Yeah. Zion, I really, really like him. I like this, the game. Obviously, it's just the price tag is really difficult. He's really similar to Kyrie Irving for me, where I'm going to be happy, if I look at a lineup and I see Zion, because I know he's not going to get that much ownership because he just can't on this slate. But at the same time, it's really tough to pay more money for Zion than for Durant on DraftKings. I think he's a much better option on Fanduel, but even there, it's tough because you have Marvin Bagley at power forward, you have Giannis, you have Draymond Green potentially, and you have Isaiah Stewart at power forward instead of center. So still kind of a loaded position there, and not a great price tag on Zion, but you are likely to get 35, 36 minutes. He has, produced over 1.3 fantasy points per minute. So I think he's still a reasonable pay up option. Brandon Ingram is pretty cheap. He hasn't been playing very well lately, but sub 8K on both DraftKings and FanDuel, should play 35 or 36 minutes, assuming this game's competitive. So I think Ingram is actually a pretty decent small forward option.
Priorities from both sides. Then we'll move on to the Kings Thunder.
I think probably Ingram on FanDuel at small forward. On the Golden State side, I would say Steph Curry.
Sacramento, OKC, Kings 5.5 point favorites, 228 total. No De'Aaron Fox, should be returning shortly. No Tyrese Halliburton. And then Harrison Barnes is doubtful. He's been seeing huge minutes lately up until that last game where he only played 24 against Dallas and departed early. Metu also questionable, which could actually play a pretty significant role in this game, depending on what direction that takes, Adam. So I look at Sacramento today and you see three of their top guys, three of the guys that are getting the most minutes on this team, all of them sidelined, facing a dreadful OKC team. Who do we prioritize from Sacramento today with all of this news that we've got in front of us, starting with Marvin Bagley?
Yeah, that is, I think, where it starts. But there's a few priorities here. They're getting a lot of ownership, and I think deservedly so. Bagley, you had Luke Walton say that he was going to be limited. He then played 34 minutes last game, so I'm assuming he's not limited. Granted, Luke Walton could just put it back in place. But it wouldn't even really matter. Like, he's still only 5K on DraftKings and 5,500 on Fanduel. If you told me Marvin Bagley was going to play 26 minutes, I'd say he's a pretty good play. But knowing that he played 34 last game, I think he looks really, really good. He's got almost a 26% usage rate without Fox on the floor this year. And this is just a really appealing game where both teams play at a fast pace. Neither team defends well. So there should be a lot of fantasy points to go around. DeLon Wright, not far behind Bagley, I don't think. There's ways that he could play fewer minutes than we expect, but I don't think it's that likely. He played every single minute after Haliburton was injured last game, played like 24 straight minutes or 20. I think he played like 20 straight minutes to close the second half after Haliburton's injury. So I'm assuming he starts tonight. He's only 5,100 on DraftKings, 5,200 on FanDuel. He's been close to a fantasy point per minute guy this year. And now there's not a whole lot of guys taking usage away from him with the Sacramento team. So I think he looks really good. I think you see a bump in usage for Buddy Hield without Haliburton. Granted, he's still mostly interested in just jacking threes and not really doing much to create for himself or anyone else. So it's not as good as it could be if Hield were just like a different sort of player, but he played 42 minutes last game. I assume you get 37 or 38 from him here. Still likely to give you a fantasy point per minute. And then Rashawn Holmes, I've mentioned a couple of times at center, just really affordably priced, dealt with some foul trouble last game, which limited him to about 24 minutes, but he played 30 minutes the game before that. I think you get 30 to 32 from him here. He's greater than a fantasy point per minute guy in a good matchup. So all four of those guys, I would say, are priorities tonight.
Same question that I asked you earlier about, I think it was the Charlotte Hornets. How many Kings are you willing to roster, and what are you coming up with when you run crunch lineups?
Yeah, it's 3 on the Kings too, and I actually feel more confident in that than I do the Hornets, because the Hornets at least they have Biyombo at 3K, they have Martin at 3K. Like, if you played, I might actually change it to 4 on the Hornets now that we have Biyombo starting, because like if you get 3K Biyombo, 3K Martin, $7,100 Ball, and then like either McDaniels or Rozier or whatever, that's still doable, because it's going to let you get like studs into the rest of your lineup. Whereas on Sacramento, they're underpriced, but they're not 3K. So like if you go Hield, Wright, Bagley, Holmes, you have 4 guys that are definitely underpriced, but it's not like you're rounding out your lineup with Steph Curry and Giannis and Durant or something. So, I think that the pricing, even though they're underpriced, they're not minimum salary like you have with Charlotte. So I'm probably going to end up going 4 max on Charlotte, but mostly getting 3, and then 3 max on the Kings.
Okay. Now, before I get to Oklahoma City, how much do you have to say about Toronto and the LA Clippers?
Nothing. Very, very little.
Okay, good. Just to make sure we have enough time here before we turn it over to Live Before Lock. I think this is far more important to hit on this game specifically, especially with some of the ownership coming in on this. You've got Spags, you got Eric Lindquist coming up next, NBA Live Before Lock. Don't go anywhere. They're taking you all the way up till 7 p.m. Eastern. And while you're at it, even while you're waiting for it to cross over, check out No House Advantage. Use the free tools that we have, the player prop projections, the optimal lineups tool. Use the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, when you sign up, and download the app and make your first deposit. Peer-to-peer player prop format, tournament style, where you can legitimately build your bankroll over there. Listen, smaller site, trying to get a foothold in the industry. They want you to win money. So go over there and do just that using our tools, which are entirely free. Not selling you anything there. They're totally free. Player prop projections and the optimal lineups tools that you can use over at No House Advantage to get that edge. Check it out today. No House Advantage. Download the app. Use that promo code Awesemo to get your free $20 when you deposit. Alexei Pogostick out for the Oklahoma City Thunder. What are we doing with Lou Dort, who we said a million times, he's like a 28, 29% usage guy without SGA on the floor?
Yeah, so he's interesting. I think he stands out, especially on FanDuel at 5,600 at small forward, 6,100 on DraftKings at the guard positions is a little bit tougher sell. Not because I don't think he's a good play, just I think there's better plays. But OKC as a whole is a really, really interesting team to me, because they run a deep enough rotation and they're unpredictable enough that there's no one guy you can really point to here with a lot of confidence to say they're a really good play. But at the same time, they're in a really good game against Sacramento, and they positively correlate as well. Like if this game's competitive down to the wire, you get maximum minutes from Marvin Bagley and Buddy Hield, you're likely to get maximum minutes from Dort and Baisley and Teo Maledon and those guys. So I think this is a team where you're not going to get a lot of ownership going to individual players, but I do like fitting them in the lineups, kind of like Detroit, only that they also have exactly like Detroit, they have the positive correlation with the very popular team as well that they're playing against. So, I think Dort's a good play. I think Baisley's good. One spot that I am looking to, and, you'll have to pay attention. We're not going to have the starting lineup before lock, I wouldn't think. But Kenrich Williams started the second half in place of Pogochevsky last game. He's only 3,700 on DraftKings, and he's actually a pretty productive fantasy player. If he starts, I would expect you get about 26 minutes from him. And since we probably won't have that lineup before lock, I think you're just going to have lower ownership on Kenrich Williams than you would otherwise.
Any interest in Gabriel Deck? Seems to be a popular topic of conversation in chat right now.
He's been really productive. I have trouble giving him more than like 16 to 18 minutes.
Yeah, he's been on the season a 1 fantasy point per minute guy. So that's cool. But I don't think you can project him for the 24 minutes that he saw a couple of days ago either.
Yeah, no, I have him at like 17.
Ready to wrap this up?
Yep.
Toronto and the LA Clippers. Toronto right now, 9.5 point dogs, 218.5 total. OG Anunoby's out. Gary Trent is doubtful. On the other side, Ibaka out. Patrick Beverley could be returning today. He's questionable. What from this game, if anything, stands out on a night where we've got like a million good plays elsewhere?
Yeah, not much. Relatively difficult matchup for Toronto. You know, I think that you can always make a case for Siakam, Lowry, or Van Vliet just on how many minutes they play. Van Vliet's only 7,100 on Fanduel, which is one of the cheaper prices we've seen on him over there. But, you know, just when you start comparing them to other teams and better matchups, they don't really stand out. So, you know, I think any of those guys are fine, but not priorities, not plays that I feel great about. On the Clippers side, basically the same thing. Paul George is still priced up from when Kawhi was out. Kawhi's not really at a price point that I'm super interested in. Zubats is cheap on FanDuel if you wanted to go there, but still not something I really love. And I don't really see much else. Like when I started to write the deep dive today, Rajon Rondo was kind of interesting, but then just so much other stuff open that it doesn't really seem like mentioning.
Okay. On either side, really.
Yeah. It's kind of just the guys that are good, you know, they're good. And if they end up in your lineup as a contrarian piece, it's fine.
All right, we'll close it out with a super chat from Avi. He asks Terrence Davis or Torrey Craig on FanDuel. If your answer is neither, that is fair, but I'm assuming he would like one.
Yeah, I would lean toward Terrence Davis. I think there's a lot of uncertainty there, but it does give him, you know, a decent ceiling. If Cameron Payne is out, I think I would lean towards Craig because I think he gets a couple more minutes.
All right, we're 15 likes away from 500. Josh may not be up next, but, you know, it would still be great. 15 away. Coming up next, Chris Spags, Eric Lindquist. Thanks for hanging out as always, guys. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Good luck tonight. This has been the Deeper Dive presented by No House Advantage. Peace.
What is up, guys? You got about 1 hour left to lock on DraftKings, FanDuel, and of course, No House Advantage. We are here for that home stretch, along with any of the curveballs and unnecessary roller coaster rides the NBA will put us on. But I am Chris Spags, joined once again by a man who I'm here with on every Tuesday, a man who perhaps has a silly voice. Perhaps he doesn't. I guess we could find out if we hit that like button enough by the halfway point of the show. But I appreciate him. You appreciate him. He's Eric Lindquist. How you doing, Eric?
Doing well. Yeah, very straightforward, super easy. Nothing to talk about slate here. We have no news that we're waiting on whatsoever. We have so much news we're waiting on. It's ridiculous, but going to need to see that Detroit starting lineup very, very badly here. Good thing we got the Charlotte one ahead of time. We don't have to, I mean, we're still going to play some kind of center roulette, I'm sure, but it is what it is. This is the slate that we were given. Let's just go.
Yeah, we got some Frank Jackson and Hamidou Diallo game time decisions to wait out here, though they did go through shoot around. So we'll see how that goes. But the first thing off, and probably the best way to lead into the slate is, well, I guess to ask you guys to hit the like button. That's a big part of what we do around here. And I know, as Lofty mentioned before on the previous show, our old pal Josh Engelman likes to do some weird things, getting likes, shaming you guys, making you feel bad about your inability to hit the like button. And that's not the kind of shows that Lofty does, that Adam does, that Eric does, that I do, that we do on the tip off either. We're more about supportive things. So here's what I'm going to say to you. You right there, person watching this, you are beautiful inside and out, whether you are good at DFS or not. So hit that like button here as a payback for me complimenting you in the most genuine way that a live streamer will ever compliment you. Hit that like button now. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you can see all the content we have going on all day long. And make sure you are playing at our sponsor, No House Advantage tonight, because we always say this here. Obviously, they're a sponsor. They're helping us put on the shows. We want you guys to play over there, not just because they give you a $20 deposit bonus at nohouseadvantage.com or when you download No House Advantage in the App Store, but also because today, the props that they have on there, it is generally going to be a softer market because they use a DFS format to help you guys win money or to give you guys a chance to win money. But today, there are some lines that I don't even know when they were updated before. Delon Wright's assist prop, a 99.9% chance of hitting the over today with some of the guys out for Sacramento's backcourt. Marvin Bagley's points and assist prop, a 94% chance of hitting today on No House Advantage. LaMelo Ball, every prop for him above 85 to 90%. So lots of easy overs today on No House Advantage, and that's what it's about over there. You're ranking 10 props for yourself out of the 500 or so they make on a given day. You're ranking them from 10 to 1. 10 is your highest confidence, 1's your lowest confidence. If you put that Delon Wright prop in at 10 points, you're going to be ahead of a lot of field right away. So go to nohouseadvantage.com, use that promo code Awesemo, and they'll deposit match you up to $20 right away. Play over there. It's a great site to play on, and these newer sites for you are going to be the best ones to win your business. Eric, let's talk about this one up top. We got Sacramento, and I think this is, to me, a very important spot to talk about. Charlotte going to be comparably important, but Sacramento guys on the boom bust tool, one of our premium features at awesemo.com. They are so highly rated because they are just severely down on bodies. We've seen Marvin Bagley come back, start to be returning to his normal minutes run, but we just don't have enough guys here with no De'Aaron Fox, no Tyrese Halliburton, no Harrison Barnes for Sacramento, playing a fellow bad team who also plays fast with not great defense in Oklahoma City. Which Kings are you prioritizing? Because to me, it does seem like my day is going to heavily depend on the fates of Delon Wright and Marvin Bagley.
Yeah, same at the moment, but I'm going to throw a big caveat out there. We've got Metu sitting at 3,200 there. That game is sitting at 8 o'clock. So like we have to figure out kind of what's going on with that rotation. If Metu ends up in the starting lineup, if he ends up playing on Fanduel 3,700 at center, not really like super interesting, but on Draftkings 3,200, I don't know, put him in the basket of all these guys that were rotating around, and he will be by far the lowest owned out of all of them. And so Chalkmaster Flex here, I know that this is like my favorite day of all time, but I want to let it be known. You have to have at least some idea. If Metu ends up playing whatsoever, he got up to 34 minutes in the starting lineup 2 games ago when he appeared. I don't know. Something tells me that you might want to have a little exposure, at least a little bit of a game plan, because would it really shock you to see Luke Walton play Marvin Bagley 25, 26 minutes coming off of an injury with Metu who ends up giving it a go there? It wouldn't surprise me. I know that. And so if Metu ends up in that starting lineup, I'm going to be shifting a lot of exposure his direction. I also think we have enough other news that we're sitting in the wings with Draymond Green and other pieces in that later game. If you're going to be playing 3 each from Charlotte and Detroit, obviously nobody can really blame you. They're super value on this slate. But if you're sitting in that late night window with Bagley and other pieces, if you have some Curry exposure, if you've got, some tournament shots, Kyle Lowry, some guys like that, mixing and matching and getting to Metu wouldn't be the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Now, Metu, and you might remember this, Eric, and I know it was near dear to my heart when we talked about Chibi Metu in one of our final late slate shows, as a guy who was starting to play some minutes, has been productive per minute, and ended up picking, I think, up a little bit of backup run in that game as part of the Kings rotation after he's been kind of in and out. And this spot for him, I agree, like him getting minutes, he's been a fantasy point per minute guy on the year. Today, I'd have him in for 1.06 fantasy points per minute, so a slight increase on a season average, season average is something that I would normally like to look for, in terms of ruling guys into my player pool or trying to get less of them. And Metu, I would agree. I think, to me, the issue is that I don't know the minute ceiling is quite as high for him, where Awesemo has him in for 16 today. I do think you can go to Mo Harkless. He's still in for 25 plus minutes from Awesemo. Terrence Davis has also been seeing decent run. Like, there are some ways that you just don't go super big, and I don't know that you have to go very big against Oklahoma City. So that'd be my concern for Metu minutes. But I agree, at his price point, he's certainly in the mix. And I guess my question for you would be, where are you ranking him amidst some of the also near minimum salary guys on Charlotte?
And that's really kind of what it is. The opportunity cost of even like suggesting a guy like Metu is knowing full well that Bagley's going to be, like, Bagley and Wright are going to be the only two pieces that really kind of sit in it. And right now I'm trying to play a little bit with salary. Last night on the Slate Starter, I talked about different scenarios with late swap where you can kind of adjust to how your lineups are doing. It had more to do with that 10 p.m. game, which isn't nearly as intriguing as what it was before with Toronto and the Clippers, when we woke up and just had this plethora of value that kind of fell into our laps. But I'm pretty sure that there's a way to get to like a combination of Metu and Hield, as opposed to going the direction of just Wright and Holmes. I haven't played around with it enough on Fanduel. I am playing a little bit more over on Draftkings today because I don't have to think so much about the positionality of it. You're able to play guys at different places, and I can kind of pivot around that way. But I think Metu Hield gives you a contrarian side. If like that Charlotte and Detroit game is really crushing you in that first hour, I think there's pivots to be made. If you get Metu in that starting lineup, getting to Hield and him as the combination, as opposed to Wright, and as opposed to, I just blanked on that, as opposed to Bagley and Wright, I'm pretty sure that that's kind of the route that I'll go, especially like, let's say I'm heavy on Biyombo, which is kind of something I'm planning on doing as of right now. The center position isn't super intriguing to me. If Biyombo goes out and has a terrible first rotation, which of course that can happen. He's done that how many times as chalk before. But I think that those are the kind of pivots that I'd be looking at, where I'd have to come off of Bagley and Wright a little bit from where I'm kind of planning on being. And that Metu play just makes way too much sense for me.
Okay, I think that's reasonable. I think the thing for me that jumps out with Sacramento is, and this is going to be an obvious point, but it'll make sense, I think, when I finish it, is that there's just no ball handlers left. So that's why I have no confidence, or more confidence in Delon Wright than perhaps a normal situation where, right, for like Detroit, a guy like Saban Lee, who I like, and I think it's frustrating to me to watch Pistons games, so I often do, because I end up with a lot of Sadiq Bey, which has been good recently. I've also ended up with good amounts of Isaiah Stewart in the past. I really end up with a lot of Pistons. We all will be in that boat today, I think, for the most part. Right. But I watched a lot of their games, and Saban Lee is just one of those dudes where if he gets the run, that's great. And he just doesn't get the run night in and night out because they're clearly have more draft capital invested in Killian Hayes. I think that's the same thing for Sacramento, where, like Chibi Metu, I would love to see him get, unencumbered run for 30 minutes in a game that's not an adverse situation like the ones he started in this year. But it's not going to be the case because they clearly want to feed Bagley minutes, see what they have, increase his trade value, or at least, give him the confidence heading into the offseason you want. And Delon Wright too, they're not going to play Kyle Guy over him. They're not going to play Jamias Ramsey, I think is what I'm saying that name right. He is a guy who's popped. You
got him. Create a player, NBA 2K for sure.
Yeah, a guy who is not projected for minutes right now from Awesemo, but maybe will pop up on your radar as somebody who could get point guard minutes, though. Currently, Awesemo giving the minutes to Kyle Guy instead. So that is something to keep in mind. But I just feel like, to me, Bagley and Wright, like those are the guys you look to, other than Buddy Hield, is going to chuck up his threes as he always does. Yeah. Like, I don't think you can go away from Wright and Bagley, because Wright's been a guy who's been getting more minutes anyway, even without having, Fox and Halliburton sideline and no other real point guard to go to.
Yeah, and right around 0.9 fantasy points per minute, combining his time at Detroit and here. Like, I have no problems going to Wright. I'm, as I said, he's 50% owned for a reason, but I'm simply trying to react. So we have an hour up until that game time, and I'm just trying to react to how my lineups are doing. If I'm going to be heavier, because there's no way you can't have exposure to this Charlotte-Detroit game, and most of my lineups are going to have at least two pieces from each side of it, more than likely, as I'm looking at my first couple runs of this crunch. I just feel like reacting to how your lineups are doing and adjusting into the right plays in that Sacramento OKC game, into whatever the Draymond God, we just got Jimmy Butler ruled out. Are you kidding me?
Okay, that's a big one.
Holy mother of Christ, our Jesus, our Lord and Savior. Amen. Oh God.
I was preparing to start talking about Caleb Martin, but I guess we should start to parse out the Miami lineup. And they are, let's see, the situation for them today. Not a great total in this game. They're going against Dallas, only a 216 combined total, obviously not reflecting the Butler.
Adebayo. Yeah.
Oh, Adebayo's out too?
No. I just said, we're going to just jam Adebayo. I got done talking crap about how he was the second highest owned center. Sorry, I was jumping the gun. That was just
no, it's okay. I wasn't
over top of you. I apologize. What a great co-host. Here I am.
No, it's fine. I wasn't emotionally prepared to add Dwayne Dedmon and Precious Achiuwa into the mix. So I'm glad that Bam Adebayo is seemingly playing, but Butler being out, you also still have no Tyler Hero. So that means that Kendrick Nunn and Goran Dragic are going to take gigantic jumps upwards, including Bam also getting a big boost upwards. And I will say, to your point about Bam, we need to see the minutes run here for me to get my full read on it. I'm sure it'll be coming out from Awesemo in a second. And of course, make sure you are getting checking out the package that we have at awesemo.com/join, because if you're like me, you like to create your own projections, but also use Awesemo as a frame of reference, you can do that, because we also have the Awesemo stat lines page that updates the minutes per every guy getting ruled out or getting ruled in. And they do it very fast. So that is a big part of my process and definitely can help you out in addition to all the other things. And we talk about the ownership projections, player projections, boom bust tool. So make sure to check that out at awesemo.com/join. But Nunn and Dragic, I mean, these guys are going to be not quite value priced. I think Bam, the logic to him is that there are going to be a lot of people playing cheap centers now, including the Bismack Biyombo's of the world, who certainly can lose minutes to some of the other young bigs or even a Cody Zeller. I do think that there is a logic in going to Bam Adebayo. It's a weak center slate. And you look at center, who else is going to get you over 50 fantasy points potentially?
Okay, yeah, I'm being dramatic, Chad. Yeah, no, Jimmy Butler out. That doesn't matter to the context of the slate for sure. Andre Iguodala, okay. So Goran Dragic and Kendrick Nunn, I think you hit that perfectly. They're not value priced. They're 5,100 and 5,700. But let me get over here to the good old on-off court tool. I mean, that's really what this comes down to. For me, the one thing that I just know off the top of my head is the assist rate jumps to the moon for Bam Adebayo. He kind of becomes where the offense funnels through in a lot of these situations with Jimmy Butler out of games. I'm pretty sure we need to get to a ton of Bam Adebayo right off the bat. The center position already kind of sucked. I already hated it. I didn't like it whatsoever on this entire slate. Yeah, I'm not going to mince words. Here we are. I just thought it was garbage. And now you have kind of a clear front runner to get up to the top there. Normally 26.6% assist rate on the entire year. That's even alongside Jimmy Butler, which is gigantic for a center. I mean, that's not quite to Nikola Jokic territory, but it's still pretty nifty and useful. You take Jimmy Butler off the floor, and that becomes 29.8%. Goran Dragic, 32.8% assist rate. But then obviously the usage jumps up for Bam up to right around 25.5%. Goran Dragic, again, 27% in 729 minutes with Butler off the floor. Dragic looking like kind of the clear-cut priority along with Bam Adebayo is like the two pieces you want to get to. And then like Andre Iguodala, it said that he will play. I just saw that came through. He's also at 3K. And we've seen a couple times where he's gotten those extra minutes. He got up to 28 minutes, put up 43 actual points against the Rockets on the 19th of April. That's another guy to throw into that bucket of 3K guys. What a slate we have been graced with today.
Yeah, this is really going to be, if you guys have not played the tanking season of NBA DFS before, strap in, because this is just a preview of what you're going to get, where at least we know a good amount of these guys and who they are in the league. And even then for Charlotte and Sacramento, maybe some of you guys out there maybe can make the case going otherwise. But over the next few weeks, as teams start really ruling guys out, I think we're seeing it a lot more with Detroit, where these guys could have played potentially today, and they just sat out with Josh Jackson and his tooth injury being the most hilarious of them all.
My tooth hurts. Yeah, I can't play basketball.
The tooth pain is serious. You don't want to screw around with that. I would say, though, that if you guys are new to DFS or new to NBA DFS in particular, this is really just the tip of the iceberg. Have no fear. Over the next few weeks, you're going to learn. You're going to learn a lot about Jamius Ramsey, I think, in particular. I'm looking through the rates here, and I'm going to update it. So the projection from Awesemo for Bam Adebayo looks pretty good. On DraftKings, I don't know that it makes him, like some super high priority play. It's going to come up a ton in the optimizers. A 44 fantasy point projection for him at 8,600. That's a little bit above 5X. So I think he'll come up, but not crazy. I think that Nunn and Dragic are the big beneficiaries. I don't know. They're not going to gain an appeal over a LaMelo Ball, who's also short some ball handlers on his team. But do you think these guys are in the mix as very viable tournament pivots who aren't going to get as much ownership as they normally would in the situation?
I think you're awesome at DFS. I think you're a very sharp guy. I disagree with you strongly. I think Bam Adebayo is by far the most clear-cut guy. Jumps up to 1.33 DraftKings points per minute on the season with Butler off the floor. We have a gigantic sample size. We have multiple situations where they funneled the ball through him over and over again. I think there's viability to taking shots. And again, Dragic does have higher usage, higher assist rates. So he definitely does stand out as somebody else that I want to be prioritizing. But we have so many guards. We have so many guards on the slate already. What we didn't have was like a clear-cut center play. Now you do. Like, this guy is above and away my favorite center play. I might even be all in on him. Not to, if you want me to overreact, here you go. Bam Adebayo, lock him in on Fanduel. That's what I'm going to do. I will not have a single lineup on Fanduel today without Bam Adebayo in it.
All right, I'm going to update all of my rates here because I do, as I've talked about before with my projections, I'll run things in a way that it'll sort of disperse what Jimmy Butler leaves behind amidst the guys that are remaining in the rotation. And I do think Dragic a 34% assist rate. Kendrick Nunn, I don't think Nunn's rates remain the same. I feel like his big
he just sees a minutes increase is really the main proponent of playing Kendrick Nunn. The rates stay about constant, but you're talking about him possibly seeing a jump to around low 30s minutes here. So that's your main appeal of going to Nunn. You got to be able to spike that in a little bit. It's not like Dragic and him, Dragic was always going to see the floor, but now his opportunity just skyrockets.
Yeah, so Dragic up to 26.5 usage. Bam. Looks like Nunn does get more of a jump than I realized. It goes to 22% usage rate and a 19% assist rate. And all right, let me run this one more time. And okay, so yeah, Bam now looks better to me. Okay, now that I adjusted his rates, definitely does get enough of an uptick. As Eric mentioned, that a 30% assist rate, I think, is really the big difference maker. 18% rebound rate boost, also not the worst because it's just a much worse rebounding team. And really the only good rebounder left behind with Butler out is now behind Bam Adebayo and Dwayne Dedmon. He's got a 25% rebound rate here. Everybody else under 10%. So I think looking at it through that prism, I'm with you. I think on FanDuel in particular, I get it more there, the positionality and the pricing. But I think on DraftKings too, I'm curious where he ranks in the boom bust tool because he does feel like a play worth getting 20 to 30% for me right now. I think it could potentially even higher.
I'm going over top of that for sure. I think, I'm just grouping it by the center, and I think Giannis was eating up a lot of my center positions. I still think that that's a viable way of going, but I mean, I did not want to be playing Biyombo at center a lot. Like, that just kind of wasn't something I was super interested in doing. I think I now have a path where I don't really have to do that. I have a huge ceiling. You're basically getting a 10K ceiling in Bam for 8,600. I really hope that it's represented in our next run, but we were already projecting him around 34 minutes. At 1.33 DraftKings points per minute, he becomes probably, depending on what ownership gets up to, my favorite player above 8K, including Kevin Durant, who's underpriced there, including Giannis, who I was going way. I still am going to be way over the field on Giannis. I'm still going to be over the field on Curry because we have so much other cheap value. But because the value at guard is so concentrated towards Ball, towards Rozier, I still feel good about Ball over top of both Dragic and Nunn. Dragic is going to take a meaningful jump for me, but man, you got to really like Bam Adebayo today.
Yeah, Bam, I have to say for the boom bust tool, we just got an update for that too. Bam, Boom Adebayo has a 20% Bam rating. I know Bam has a 19% boom rating. It looks like he's in the optimal 7% of the time. The Heat players overall, actually, I think the optimal might not have been updated, so that's why I think that one takes a little bit longer to run. But the boom ratings for them, it does seem like Nunn and Dragic getting the bigger boost according to the boom bust tool, and also Trevor Ariza and Iguodala, who Eric talked about earlier at minimum salary. Those guys also take a pretty big jump upwards now. Where for me, as I mentioned on some of the shows, I've actually had some issues with my sorting process where I was just getting frustrated with leaving some really good lineups on the table that I think should have been sorted out in the positive way, ended up being left out. I ended up switching my exposure to the boom bust tool where I'm using either the greater of the boom or the optimal rating. And that's been what's been really running good for me over the last week or so. And I think in today's spot, won't be surprised if I get 25% of the remaining Heat players. Kendrick Nunn, I think 30% seems about right. 30% boom rating for him. And the minutes get a lot more secure. So, man, I think this is sort of an interesting tournament way to look at it too, where you can make a pretty cheap lineup loaded up on Heat players. And I think that to me is the pivot point to some of the more speculative value out there where like Goran Dragic, Kendrick Nunn, Bam Adebayo, there's no chance those guys are going to fail outright. Whereas some of the 3K guys absolutely can.
So here's what I'm doing. Because we also have Draymond Green that we're waiting on. That's another huge piece to this entire slate. I mean, I feel really disgusting. I'm going to be limiting a lot of that Charlotte, Detroit, especially I think we still have two big pieces of news from Detroit to wait on. that we need to get very, very soon, hopefully. But I need to figure out what. Yeah, I'm going to be lighter, I think, probably than I'm going to be underneath the field on Charlotte, Detroit, I think. And I'm going to wait for a lot of that news. I mean, we talk about late swap all the time, you and I do. And it's such a big part of my process. I truly think it's one of the biggest edges that still exists. Being able to find ways to pivot into lower owned plays. That was kind of the appeal of talking about Metu. So we can wait on him. We can wait on Draymond Green to maybe get Juan Toscano Anderson or somebody else there on the back end. It's not like that game environment was like phenomenal. I mean, it's sitting under 220, which is pretty high for a Detroit game in general. That just tells you the kind of pace up spot that Charlotte presents. But I like waiting on all of my plays to get some of the lower owned plays. You can make fun of me, call me the chalk donkey, do all the things that you want to do. It's not true. I know for a fact I'm going to get on some lower owned pieces in that 8 p.m. Eastern time window.
And also some of the people in the chat, I think people are mad that we're talking about the BAM this much. And I think too, that's something that, when Eric introduces an idea, whether it's this show, one that I'm doing, or on the other shows, it's our job as hosts to sort of talk about it and talk through it, especially when one of our teammates here or my analyst here, Eric, is talking about something and see something interesting. We have to debate those points. But also this is important news because the news that comes in this last hour before lock, and obviously the NBA, we've all grown accustomed to it. But on a day like today, where there already was pre-existing value, a lot of easy ways to build lineups, people might not get to BAM as much as they should. People might not get to Nunn as much as they should. They might not get to Dragic as much as they should because they love their construction with Bismack Biyombo, and they love their construction with LaMelo Ball and all those guys. And it's important to talk through all of these, whether you think BAM is a play or not. And I think if you think he's not a play, that's sort of a poor reflection on how you're approaching things. But that's sort of the process here, is like when you get this news in the last hour, especially on a day where people were comfortable with how things were looking, it's just very important to talk about those guys because they gain an appeal infinitely compared to where they would have been otherwise.
Yeah, I love you so much. You're so kind. Here we go.
I got to defend you. I mean, I wasn't as crazy about BAM, and I think you're right. Looking at the rates more, even with my approach that accounts for guys being rolled out and then getting the production left behind it, he just wasn't popping up enough. But if you adjust the rates to where they are, definitely looks a little better. So that's the point.
He's my favorite play on the slate.
Let's talk about Charlotte some more, because I know you mentioned your approach on Charlotte, and I think I'd be curious to hear Adam's thoughts now, because it's rare for him to talk about deviating from sort of the max 3 per team, and that's usually what I'm setting at on a fantasy cruncher level. And actually, because of him saying he was willing to go to 4 for Charlotte today, I was a little more willing to go to 4, because it jumped out to me too that you have 2 guys who are playable at minimum salaries, a couple guys who are fairly playable behind them who are also at minimum salaries or $100 above it, and you also have the high upside guys like LaMelo, like Terry Rozier, even a cheaper guy like Malik Monk has, I would say, he's shown a 45 fantasy point ceiling this year. Now you have less guards in the rotation available to take those shots away. In addition to no PJ Washington, no Gordon Hayward, all these guys are out. I feel like Charlotte to me is still appealing. Eric, I know you're going to get less than them for a tournament standpoint, but if you were to prioritize your Charlotte players that you're getting now, I guess my question would be, if you're going to deprioritize Charlotte overall, which guys are being deprioritized and which guys are still remaining heavily in your player pool?
That's the right question. So deprioritizing Biyombo, deprioritizing Zeller, Carey. I don't think there's a reason for me on this slate where I already had so much uncertainty. They're at 3K. They're going to be very popular still. That BAM news might cut into it a little bit here, but not enough. I still think that they're going to be pretty heavy there because I'm going to be playing so much heavy BAM Adebayo, and that's just a stand that I'm making. Again, 1.33 DraftKings points per minute is not something you're finding at 8,600 very often. And that's basically what you're plugging BAM into, and it can jump even further. So Cody Zeller, Bismack Biyombo getting deprioritized. No piece of I'm going to have some smatterings of them, but I'm going to be dramatically under the field. I still think that I want to be at about the field. I might have pulled the trigger a little bit. Me being dramatic, very strange, but LaMelo Ball, 7,100, Terry Rozier, 7,300. I think Terry Rozier gets deprioritized a little bit. I still think he makes for a phenomenal tournament play over on DraftKings, but I'm going to kind of go Starsy and Scrubsy with BAM going over the top of the field on Giannis, and then on Steph Curry as well. Those are kind of the 3 that I really want to be way over top of the field on. And I'm going to piece them with some cheaper options. We'll find out what happens with Detroit and Saben Lee. That's going to be something that I want to be taking a good hard look at here in these next 30 minutes. Along with you, I think you're definitely correct about your Saben Lee takes there. And then playing Caleb Martin there at shooting guard, small forward, 3K, another piece that it's hard for me to get away from. Jalen McDaniels, I can probably be at about the field and move on with my life and not think about it too much. There's enough bodies. Like they've shown Vernon Carey and Cody Zeller hasn't been in the rotation here a couple times, but they can kind of piece this around, go smaller. Detroit doesn't really have a large front court by any means today. I mean, Sekou Doumbouya, Tyler Cook, both a little undersized there, and Isaiah Stewart isn't like a traditional 5 by any means. I guess he is, but just a smaller center for sure. I think there is some downside that sits there at Jalen, but obviously can destroy the slate, and I don't want to be like off of him.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to look at it. And I think the other thing for me that I would point to, and this has been something that has paid off in the past with the last few weeks in NBA DFS, where the Detroit OKC game in particular is what comes to mind for me, where, and it happens to be Detroit again. When you have two pretty bad teams, and granted, Charlotte does have more talent because they still have LaMelo, still have Terry Rozier, but two fairly bad teams playing against each other, I have no issue really loading up on a squad normally, and I'm still going to have a lot of Charlotte, I think probably more than Eric will today. Caleb Martin to me looks like he'll be in about half my lineups, a little bit more than that. Bismack came down because of Bam popping up, but the rest of these guys are going to be well represented. And I think, too, this is a spot where if you have the usual discomfort about, these guys are cheap, but what if they get blown out? What if they play really poorly? They could play poorly, and they could still play 40 minutes of 0.8 fantasy point per minute basketball and have more than enough upside at their fantasy point. Caleb Martin in particular, well, I'm hoping this absorbs Cody Martin's powers as a symptom of them being twins and him being out today. But either way, still one of the better projected values on the slate, 3K minimum. Awesemo has him in for 30 minutes today. Bismack Biyombo in for 24 minutes from Awesemo. So I think that's still a number, actually 26 minutes from Awesemo. That's still a pretty good number for him, even if you could sort of shortchange him a little bit there. The projection's still going to pop. Jalen McDaniel, same thing for him, in for 35 minutes from Awesemo. I only have him being a 0.82 fantasy point per minute guy, but those minutes that he has in particular, I don't know who they could even go to. I guess like Grant Riller's too small to pick up those minutes. Miles Bridges is out, in addition to PJ Washington, all the guys we talked about earlier. So McDaniels, to me, I think the minutes probably the most secure for him, just because I don't know who else could play the 4 really, unless you're going to say Caleb Martin can, but he's already playing the 3 and the 2 probably.
You are dead on with that. And I didn't say that, you're going to just be way over top of the field at Charlotte. I'm going to be at and below. For me, it's really just, I think the more important question on this entire slate is figuring out who to be lighter on. I think I have a path now where I'm going to be lighter on the centers from Charlotte, and I feel really, really good about it. Bismack Biyombo, not traditionally a huge fantasy point per minute guy for a center, not jumping meaningfully in that regard, but obviously the minutes and opportunity are there, but I need to find deviations and I need to find ways to get different. I guess his ownership's dropped to around 15%, which is unappealing. I was hoping it was going to be a little bit higher there. So being lighter on him makes a lot of sense, and it's going to be eating a lot of Bam. And then I think, as you said, Caleb Martin, just the flexibility he has at 3K to play him at shooting guard and small forward. It really comes down to now you also have a possibility. If Andre Iguodala gets up to 30 minutes, who got announced in, is probably going to be starting there. And we have a lot of things that just came in. Not having Kenrich Williams now starting, that kind of removes him from my player pool. I don't have to be thinking about that. We got the Thunder starting lineup. We got Draymond Green ruled in. So I think that it says that he will play. So I don't think you have to be taking any shots there. I think Draymond Green now becomes lower owned than he probably should be. You just saw the upside yesterday. So I think getting to him at power forward also feels like a good spot to be.
Yeah, and also Steven Adams and Lonzo Ball will start today. So if you were playing Willie Hernangomez, even with his minutes getting jerked around recently, definitely not the time to do that. And Lonzo going to get his usual run, one would expect. And let's flip the hat and do money time, and no silly bits today, because this is a serious news show today. Yes. So hit that like button, guys. We appreciate it a bunch. If you can get us, let's see, where are we right now? It's 690 likes. Get us to an easy 750 likes. I feel like you guys can do that easily. We're giving you guys some free value here. Almost 3K people watching the stream right now. So we appreciate all of you guys being here. Hit that like button, smash it if you can. Top 5 owned plays according to our ownership projections at Awesemo.com, but you can always get for yourself at Awesemo.com/join. Number 1, Marvin Bagley, 57% now. Delon Wright, number 2 at 49%. Number 3, Giannis Antetokounmpo at 39%. Number 4, LaMelo Ball at 37%. And number 5, Kevin Durant at 32%. And so here's normally, we can burn through this a little bit more, but I'm going to ask the question that I sometimes ask, Eric. Which guys would you come under on out of this top 5? And I think you're going to go a different direction than me, so I'll let you go first.
It feels really gross to be under on Kevin Durant today at 9,300 now. I think because I'm going to be going the Bam direction. God, it feels really awful. I mean, Kevin Durant, 1.47 fantasy points per minute. You know what? I think... God, they're all so good right now. I'm not fading any one of them, but I think I'm going to be lower on Delon right now. I'm going to have pieces there. just being a little bit under. Marvin Bagley's so good. We can still wait on that Metu news. If Metu ends up in, it's going to be Bagley as the answer. But yeah, I'd say maybe probably going to be lower. I'm so high on him on props already. I mean, I've basically gone in the market and bet the over on 6.5, 7.5. I've been writing it all the way up this entire day. So head over to OddsShopper and see what that's at. That's still something that I would want to get over on the assists, but I don't know if he's going to necessarily have all the usage that we think that he might in this spot. I think with Buddy Hield on the floor, Marvin Bagley on the floor, I'll maybe be a little bit lighter on Delon right now.
So my pick to be under on would actually be Giannis and Kevin Durant both, because, and to be clear, not by a lot, but I do think this is one of the spots, and we saw it yesterday where the Awesemo ownership projections, I think, and I've been here for 3.5 years now. I think I could say with some degree of actual certainty that they're the best ownership projections you're going to find around there. There's been a lot of time put into them, and also they work for some of the top players in DFS for good reason. But sometimes it's hard for them to fully encapsulate what the public is going to do. And I think we saw that yesterday with Russell Westbrook and Domantas Sabonis's numbers being so high ownership wise, where the ownership projections can't account for that, because much like a regular projection, it's accounting for that average outcome, and they do, incorporate for news and trending topics and all that stuff. But it's still, when you see what 70% Westbrook it was last night, I think, or 60% Sabonis in some of the tournaments, like you can't account for that because it's not a logical number. I think because of that game on Sunday with both these guys going head to head, putting up 40 real life points each and going crazy, I think people are going to expect that to happen again. And the price points are good, but I think if they then get you to 50 to 60 fantasy points, I just think they're a little overvalued, and I'm going to cap myself at 30 for both, just because it wouldn't shock me to see these guys get to 50 or 60, because I think people are very much box score watchers out there, especially for down this home stretch for the star players, and it can happen again. It's still a competitive team between two top East competitors. I just think that Giannis and Durant are going to come up really, really heavy on DraftKings in a way that you can't possibly account for with our normal ownership projection process.
Both active. Oh, this is the worst case scenario. Okay.
Not for Detroit.
Mainly because they could just not play. I've been thinking about that also all day. Because you need to have your 8. You need to get it all situated. Seeing that they're active, do we have that starting lineup yet? That's really what matters to me. No, we don't. Doesn't look like, does News God have it posted? No, he does not. So therefore it is not there. Oh my goodness. All right. So they're active. We got the Detroit guys in. This is great.
Also,
Why is
Draymond a game time decision after he was expected to play?
What?
This is gonna be
what are we doing here? Like what? What is it that you do here, beat writers? What are you doing here? Like oh God. Okay.
Let me do the Fanduel top 5 too, because I don't want to leave those guys feeling excluded. Fanduel's top 5.
Sounds
LaMelo
nice.
Ball,
I'll figure something out.
Those people, you Fanduel people. I'm not playing on Fanduel today, so that's why I could say you people out there. But we appreciate you Fanduel folks just as much. LaMelo Ball 39%, Marvin Bagley 38% is number 2. Giannis Antetokounmpo number 3 on Fanduel at 33%. Number 4 Delon Wright at 32%, and number 5 Terry Rozier at 30%, rounded up there. Same question, Eric, for Fanduel. Those 5 guys: LaMelo, Bagley, Giannis, Delon Wright, Rozier. Which one would you be wanting to come under on Fanduel?
So on FanDuel, I was always planning on going higher on Rozier, taking the $200 and taking the discount there, going over the field on ball on DraftKings. I think I'm going to actually just be at the field on ball on both sites, going to Terry Rozier still and being higher on him. But yeah, I mean, I'm going way over on Bam, who's right below them there, sitting at 29%. I'm just lock buttoning him at this point. I don't want to, I'll just allow for my day to be made or broken by him. Maybe Giannis might be a guy you could go to, but I think at power forward, just locking in those raw points, going there alongside either Stewart, McDaniels, Bagley. You have so many good plays at that position. Maybe Giannis would be the one guy you could be lighter on as a result of that, but that won't be me.
Okay. No, that's reasonable. I think to me, I think your BAM logic is also part of why I don't mind getting a little bit more away from Durant and from Giannis, because I think there are some now ways that you can get those guys in the 8K range and pile up and hope that you can maybe pass them cumulatively with the right value plays. But definitely some different ways to play tournaments today, no matter what site you're playing on.
Yeah.
Let's see.
There's just so many good plays. Can everybody understand that? When we say that we're lighter on a guy, everybody's going at me because I said Delon Wright on DraftKings or doing whatever. It just is a process of there are so many good plays, and it's hard to really conceptualize what you want to do. I think that Bismack Biyombo ownership, it really makes sense that it's coming down because now you have such a significantly better play at the center position with a guy like Bam. We have, again, seeing the words active doesn't mean anything to me. I need that Detroit starting lineup because if Diallo and Frank Jackson, if either of them aren't in it, I'm just going to have like 0 of them there. And we just got Metu ruled out too, which is really nice to see. I think that just solidifies Bagley as incredible.
Yeah, I would agree. I felt that way anyway, but I agree that makes the pathway even easier for Bagley to have an outlier day. And let's see, what was the thing you said before that? Sorry, I'm pacing things, and you made a point there that I wanted to talk about, but now it's completely escaped my
Nothing mind. I say matters. No, no, I'm kidding. You're lovely. I was kidding. I just got this look from Jordan, like I love the fact that his head is just always down here, and he's just kind of always looking, always lurking.
You see the eyes peep up.
You see the eyes, and it's like, But I was just saying that there are so many good plays, and you can't play absolutely everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, you can play a little bit of everybody in 190 lineups, but you want to make stands. You want to kind of cast your net in a certain direction other people aren't. I think because of how much I love Bam, that's going to be my big stand on the entire slate. I feel pretty good about it. I don't feel like I will regret anything. If Kevin Durant goes out and puts up 70 and I'm underweight to him, would I be shocked? No, I wouldn't be shocked at all. But I think having somebody that's more locked in at the center position and going elsewhere, I know that that's some kind of a spend up compared to a guy like Rashawn Holmes or elsewhere, but obviously Holmes and Bagley definitely receive a boost here. We'll see what they end up in the next run, but we have 20 minutes and we're just kind of waiting for this Detroit starting lineup. And if it says it on Fanduel, I'm still not listening to them. Appreciate that. Just a kid from Akron, but we'll wait on News God.
Yeah, never trust your sportsbook or DFS provider to be giving you timely news, even though some of them are doing a better job keeping up with it. I know Lofty on the Deeper Dive is talking about DraftKings being quicker to pause their lines when they get news now, and that's where they care about news. It's making sure that you're not getting an edge quite as much as you should, because that's their job. Is they're trying to keep the margins as tight as possible. But make sure you're checking whether it be our News God, whether it be the other handles out there that we all know and are following as well. Just make sure you are getting your own news cycles in the mix. I just wanted to talk about your point for lineup construction, because I know our guy over under in the chat who you hate him, you love him, whatever, he's there very frequently. And I think one thing that he's victory lapping being right about Russell Westbrook the other day, and you will never see a man who is happier. The people joke about our boy Eric Lindquist here liking chalk. Boy, over under victory lap and a chalk play is definitely a whole other category of it. But I have to say he's talking about there about fading Russell Westbrook, because I mentioned on a slate where he was going to be 20% owned on Saturday that I would have 20 to 25%. That somehow constitutes fading in his mind. On slates for the most part, and I think this is something to keep in mind, is that these guys for the most part, they're great situations. Westbrook went nuts yesterday. Obviously, that was a play a lot of people should have had. But when you are in a slate where you have options at the same price points, you have completely different line construction options that can also leverage the value plays out there. Like to me, if you were to treat a Giannis or Kevin Durant as a lock play today, like I think a lot of people are going to do, I think it's just the wrong move. And you should get your share of them. I mentioned I'll get 30% of them. But if you're playing 50, 75% of these guys, you're just limiting your outcomes, I think, in a way that's not the best. And I get people want to keep chasing those big days. I was very happy to get my Westbrook exposure. Wish I had more Westbrook and Sabonis. But when it comes to night-to-night profitability, just locking plays in left and right, that was why I had to change my sorting process, because I ended up doing that inadvertently more often than not.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you're somebody who can take an overweight approach. You're also somebody who likes and can incur that risk. I think it just really has to do with what's your risk tolerance. Like if you're going to spread it out a bunch, yeah, you're probably going to lose a little bit in most nights. It's going to be harder for you to hit the jackpot on the days that you really want to be going for that first. The way that you play, and I think it's something that I respect, you're kind of all or nothing. It's going to be at the top of the board, or it could go very, very poorly on an all-in play. But I like the ability to take stronger stands on certain plays. Yesterday, I had 40% RJ Hampton, and like he was 6%. You can make fun of me for whatever, but like it was a play that made a lot of sense. Seeing some minutes increase there, started getting some stuff. I missed that slate over the weekend where he got up to 27 minutes. He ended up playing like around 30 minutes, I think, or just over. And that's the kind of play that we were looking at today. Metu was kind of a result of everybody going towards Biyombo and all these other plays that I thought maybe there was an upside for him to get to 28, 30 minutes. He's off the board. We don't have to think about it, but definitely one of those slates where there are so many routes that you can go. play your guys. Play the guys that you feel comfortable being over top of the field. We have the data over at Awesemo. We have the projections that can tell you what you kind of like, what the optimal route is going. But think about ownership. Think about where the pivots can exist. Draymond Green, I guess, is now a game time decision. That's a whole nother situation, because I just went way higher on Draymond Green, and now probably gonna have to cut that down a little bit. But those are the kind of risks you have to take if you want to get first in a tournament. It's the Ricky Bobby, you're first or you're last.
Yeah, and it's about taking educated risks, but also, trying to curtail the downsides as much as possible. And I think that, to me, is, it's always a learning process, always an important part of it all. Porzingis officially ruled out. Maxi Kleber also could miss 2 to 3 games. Some news that came out recently. We got a couple super chats and some premium Slack, so we'll take some questions now. If you have any, drop them in. And over 3,000 people in here. We appreciate you guys. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you are, because shows like this one, the deeper dive before us, the tip off before that, all the MLB content we have that goes off every day. Our day starts here at 6:30 in the morning with Josh's process videos, where he takes you through everything he's doing to prep an NBA slate. So if you're new around here, subscribe. And if you hate it, just unsubscribe. I won't be mad at you. You don't have to be no butthurt here. Just give it a shot here. And I think check out what we're doing here on a given day. And we appreciate it a bunch. Super chats. Let's get real fast. Sold Dope 123 saying, sup guys, on Fanduel, Ingram and Hield versus Martin and Durant. Eric, which way would you want to go with that one?
I like Buddy Hield a lot. I like, let me see. What did I even see that? Ingram, Hield, Martin, Durant. I'm probably going to be, I think Ingram is a FanDuel specific play. So I'll go the Ingram Hield route. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I would go. So I'm not as big on Ingram today. I would go Martin Durant. I know that's a chalkier one, and I just made my whole spiel about Durant, but I think, to me, Ingram is the question mark that I have there, where I don't think you're getting a fantastic, play here that's going to be solo owned. He's going to be decently owned on FanDuel. I'd rather just take the guy that I think has higher upside with Durant. We got some other super chats. Brandon Mahler asking, who do you like more between Luka and Curry on DK? I think for me, it's hard to ignore Steph Curry having a 37% usage rate in court time without Oubre and Wiseman. And I guess there are some ways it gets a little tougher for him if we do get Draymond Green ruled out. But I think I would be more inclined to go Curry's way. Let me see where I'm going ownership wise. But you have a lean?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I got more. Right now I have more Curry. I have 22% Curry, 17% Luka on DraftKings. So it would be Curry by a nose.
Yeah, I'm probably going to go a little bit more Curry. I will say Doncic too, because I'm just thinking about it and I'm plugging in what to do with him. On Cruncher, I would just make him small forward specific. I think if you're going to get to any Doncic whatsoever on the slate, don't play him at point guard. Also, going back to this Pistons thing, because I think this is just ginormous. I'm taking Diallo and Frank Jackson out of my player pool right now. I just don't trust it. I don't trust that they're going to play today. I think they're active. I don't know. It's just There was a situation earlier this season where Frank Jackson, I can't remember what slate it was, but Frank Jackson got ruled in. Oh, God. Now, as soon as I say it, Hamidou Diallo in the starting lineup.
I thought they would.
What a
Jackson
day.
coming off the bench, and that's what he's been doing anyway for the most part. So
oh, my God. Fine. Okay. Just take everything I just said completely out, and I'm going to be over the field.
The good news is it's the worst when you go deep, not you, but the general you, when you go deep into the spiel, and then you're like, oh, fuck. Like, I just said this whole thing.
At least I caught it right away. I didn't give chat any time to eviscerate me, which is great, because I am soft as a Beatty's bottom.
There was a tip off where it was me and Ben Rossa, of course, Dr. Ben Rossa, a title that he's deserved after his years of going to school at the University of Phoenix to be a money doctor. But there was one day where he was like trying to stop me, because we, on the tip off, we do like a lot of, it's ESPN style for the most part. We're giving our take. We do, free ball a little bit more, freestyle. I guess we free ball too. We go commando a little bit with our
freestyling. You know what that's from?
No, I don't.
Oh, Flight of the Conchords.
Actually, I didn't hear you.
We're freestyling. Okay.
Oh, cool. Yes. I do love Flight of the Conchords.
I was going to say, because we have the What We Do in the Shadows correlation now.
That's what Jermaine, anyway, so Ben corrected me, but because, we just do our soundbite thing, like he was sort of like doing some sort of gestures on the Zoom where I wasn't looking anyway. And I went on like a 30-second rant about a guy who had gotten ruled out in the 5 minutes between shows. It's like, God damn it. It's a frustrating game. Last super chat here, then we'll jump back to the premium Slack, answer some questions there. Sunflower asking Jalen, McDaniels, and Hield, or Bay and Nunn. Bay and Nunn's kind of an interesting tournament play. So I think I would go Bay and Nunn, but I will probably have more exposure to McDaniels and Hield.
I will be under the field on Sadiq Bey. I can tell you that much. I know it's just so weird to be paying $6K for anybody in that mid-range and to actually make it Sadiq Bey. I mean, he's down to 10%. So sure, if that's where you want to be planning your tournament flag, sounds great. But I will be doing the Caleb Martin thing at 3K, screwing around with that. I'll take some shots at Luka in a small forward position over on DK, and I'll go the other direction as well. I'll go the McDaniels heel.
All right, we got some questions in the premium Slack that let's go through right now. Jay Freed's asking, can we get to Damian Jones now? I think he's asking that more like, can we play him? And initially I was like, I didn't know I wasn't in the required Damian Jones content for the show. Damian Jones looks not playable to me still. I think
that is correct. That is correct. And there's another movie for you. We're crushing.
0.73 fantasy point per minute guy, now getting 16 minutes from Awesemo, so still not a lot. I think you maybe give them 18 if you wanted, and still to me not like you have a very clear cut kind of hierarchy of guys here where it's Hield, Bagley, Holmes, and Wright up top, and then if you want to get some Davis and Harkless, that's fine. I still wouldn't play the other guys though. If Jahmi'us Ramsey goes off tonight, I'm going to be so upset because I'm intrigued by him. I've seen his name. I've entered his name for the first time in so many different sheets today. And that's the one thing that scares me. And I also wouldn't play Kyle Guy either because last game, I don't know if Kyle Guy was hurt or whatever, but he didn't play last game. Jahmi'us Ramsey did play some third string point guard minutes. So it's possible Kyle Guy is not in the rotation either. If you're trying to figure out. Are you
hearing the names that you're saying out loud? Yeah, we don't need to play any of these guys.
Well, sometimes people play the backup just to get, in case Delon Wright gets in foul trouble or sucks or whatever. So I just want to say I wouldn't play Kyle Guy regardless.
The backup for the guy who can still 7-8x even in limited minutes. The opportunity is just so crazy for some other plays on this slate. There's really no need to get weird like that. It's really finding where are the pivots on some of the upper range guys that you want to be doing. Where you want to be going with them. I think we've established very much so Giannis, Bam, the priority for me up top, some small forward Doncic, but we're pretty straightforward on what we need to do today. There's going to be one or two pieces that really pop off. Sadiq Bey would make some sense at 6K, but I'm not going to do it. I was going to go the Kenrich Williams route, but now I don't think the minutes are really there. 3,700. That's not something. Terrence Davis been producing at a higher clip, 0.86 fantasy points per minute. He could be the guy who really breaks away, coming in under 10% owned. So a couple of options for you if you're trying to quote unquote get super different, but don't get crazy off of some of these top end plays.
All right, we got 10 minutes left to lock here, so let's speed around some questions while I get in my final crunch here. Let me go back. We got Morgan on the premium Slack asking if you guys are both going under on KD or Giannis, where would you guys spend up? For me, it's just spreading it around more, getting more of Curry, getting more of Luka, just making sure that I'm pretty well represented with all the studs, getting Bam back in the mix more. So that's really it for me. I think KD and Giannis are perfectly fine plays, but if they end up over owned, I just would rather get 30% to 20% or 20 to 30% of a bunch of guys. So that's it for me. But Eric, how are you feeling about that? If you were to go under on KD or Giannis, which ways would you go?
I think I'd be just funneling to Steph Curry. So Steph Curry, as I said, 765 minutes with Kelly Oubre off the floor this season, 36.8% usage, 1.69 DraftKings points per minute. That is the outrageous healthy number. I think I would just be flooding a bunch of ownership to Steph Curry. He's 9,700 over on Fanduel. That's yummy. I think going to him over on DraftKings, where now his price inexplicably just dropped $400 yesterday, even though he put up 62. Okay, yeah, I'll go there too.
All right, and let's soundbite these questions too, so we can get a bunch in. Fanduel single entry interest in Fred VanVleet or Kawhi, both seem underpriced. Could be a great late night hammer. I have to say the Clippers, to me, not playing Kawhi or Paul George, I don't see how you could on DraftKings. I think in Fanduel, I get it because Paul George will be played a bit more, but I just think there are better plays today. I don't know if it's a Fanduel thing I'm not accounting for quite as much, Eric, but would you play VanVleet and Kawhi in a single entry?
No. Kawhi is coming in with quite a bit of ownership, but low 30s minutes. You played 30. We've got him projected in for 31 and a half here. 9K. Now you kind of do lose the Jimmy Butler piece where, maybe you could have been going that direction. I think that's going to go to Durant. It's going to go to Kawhi, but the small forward position is kind of not that intriguing outside of Durant and Kawhi. So I know why the ownership's going there, but I think there are some cheaper pieces that you can take shots on. I don't want to play Lugansdort, but I'm going to, sitting down there at the bottom end. I'm happy to go there. And then Caleb Martin just makes too much sense at 3,500 over there.
Also, my two most exposed Pistons on DraftKings are the two guys who were game time decisions. So I'm feeling good about my Hamidou Diallo.
That's like the tournament player in me. That's what I would generally try to do. I have actual concern for Frank Jackson. Still not being like, I know he hasn't been starting as of late. It says he's active. That just sounds really, really strange to me, rather than to say that he will play. I don't know. Maybe that wording, maybe I'm overthinking that a little bit, but
they love Frank Jackson though. I don't know. I mean, you could be right. It could just be a weird injury.
It happened earlier this season is the reason I'm saying it. I can't remember the exact slate, but I will put my life on it.
He
that
wasn't
it had
really
already where he got ruled out after a first quarter. And we just got another thing saying that he's active today. That's just terrible wording to hear as opposed to saying he will play.
Okay. I'm a little more believer in Frank playing today, but I get it. I think to him, it's just more that he's playing off the bench. So you can't say he's starting and you can't say for sure that he'll play, because I guess there's some way that he could just not see minutes. So I think that's more the way the reporting comes out. But they like, I was watching the Pistons local broadcast, because I mentioned I watch a lot of Pistons because I play too much of them every day. And they were like doing a Frank Jackson highlight reel. They love his hair because his hair is like long and kind of Anderson Varejao-y. So they are very much team Frank Jackson and giving him a ton of run and letting him chuck left and right. KRG
Victor Crumb of the Detroit Pistons. You know?
Yeah, that's look. You got to do your research. You got to watch your Pistons game tape and watch the local broadcasters to know how much they like Frank Jackson. KRG asking best pay up option under 8K for a DK GPP. I'm going to sort my pricing here, but pay up option under 8K is sort of a weird way to phrase that. But do you have anything that comes to mind?
It's kind of a dead range. If I was going up there on DraftKings, you said, correct?
Yep.
I mean, Buddy Hield and Terry Rozier, but they're pretty owned. I think if there's one guy that you want to be going to, because we just saw him explode, and I think that he kind of is one of those plays. Not that I go crazy on hot streaks, but I do have 5% of Pascal Siakam. So that's a guy that has a crazy ceiling that was expressed 70.75 against the Lakers. Toronto needs to keep winning games to be playoff consideration. So I like going to Pascal there.
Yeah, actually, I would agree with Siakam. I think to me, the highest exposed guy that I would have is probably either Hield or Rozier. But I think Siakam and Lowry, two plays that I did like the other day. Yeah. They're still in LA. Maybe some of the LA nightlife that's reopening got them. But these guys both project decently well, not too highly owned. So I think it would be for me, Siakam or Lowry as those tournament plays, guys that, you don't want a ton of exposure to, but maybe you can spike that upside. Best pay down shooting guard on FanDuel. Do you have any lean on that, Eric?
Best pay down on shooting guard. Let me pull it up here. I don't want to play Malik Monk. I don't want to play Torrey Craig, but I guess those would kind of be the two. Paul George has a ton of ownership coming his way, even at 9K. I would rather go Fred VanVleet. He's kind of my play that is very FanDuel specific for today. Torrey Craig would be my favorite 3,600 guy, but I only have 2 shares of him, so take that for what you will. Terrence Davis, 3,800, I like a lot, actually. I lied, so I have more of him.
Speaking of, we got neither or in the premium Slack. Terrence Davis or Malik Monk for a DK GPP. I think that's very much Malik Monk for me.
Yeah, in DK, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Malik Monk has a very big upside. I think that will go under owned.
He's just not the greatest. I think people think that he's a better fantasy point per minute producer. Like 0.9 now at this point in time, there is a crazy amount of opportunity. Devontae Graham out there, but I'm not going nuts with Malik Monk. You said DraftKings though, and he's 5K on FanDuel. That's why.
He's 4,300 on DK. I've been being just shy of a fantasy point per minute today, but you're right. He's only a 0.95 fantasy point per minute guy. So I think maybe a bit more love for his assist upside than is usually there. But in terms of a pure point scorer, I think that is one thing that would not shock me to see an outlier scoring day when you have Malik Monk expected to play 30 minutes. Let's see. Last question here. Mr. Moneybags asking McDaniels and Dragic or Diallo and none for a DK GPP. He always asks either ors, where I like both sides quite a bit. I think I would go Diallo and none just because Diallo's ownership will be a bit lower because of this game time decision that just went on. And none, I think, got the as big of a boost as Dragic. So I would go Diallo and none.
I would probably go the same. Yes.
Thoughts on Ariza as a pivot? Ariza looks fine to me. I don't know how much I got of him today. This
is kind of an interesting thing because I've been trying to figure out what to do with some of these other Heat wings as we've been talking, which is made exponentially more difficult as you're doing a show for sure. But Trevor Ariza, I think might actually see a little bit of a downgrade for me, which sounds stupid and counterintuitive. Maybe he sees a couple extra minutes, but not having Jimmy Butler out there spacing out the floor doesn't exactly help a guy like Trevor Ariza, who's not going to go out and create his own shot by any means. Definitely has to have somebody setting him up. Maybe I have a ton of Bam. I wouldn't be sad to see Trevor Ariza go for a ceiling game, but I don't want to be going completely nuts on that play today. By any means. So caution it, but I understand why you might want to go there. I'm just not going to be on Trevor Ariza today.
Yeah, I get it too. And he has spiked random upside days when Butler's been out, but I couldn't quite get there as much as I would have liked to. So I get it. I think it's a pretty solid play, but it just didn't come up for me in an optimizer. So I can't really fully advocate. Middleton, Ayton, or Ingram and Allen for a FanDuel single entry. This is a group of guys I do not see a lot of love for. I think I go Ingram and Allen.
Yeah, I did. Everything about that didn't sound. I don't want to play anything with Allen in it. I'll let that be known.
Let's see. Any miss any more here? Going through the premium Slack. Jordan, there weren't any super chats, were there, that came through? Okay, good. Would you pivot off Martin to Iggy because of ownership? I would still play more Caleb Martin just because I think that he'll have an easier pathway to getting productive minutes. I do think Iggy's in play, but I got 2% Iggy compared to a lot more Martin. It does make me feel like a bit of a chalk donkey, to use a phrase that's been flying around here on a lot of shows with a certain Eric Lindquist lately. But I think for me, I would go Caleb Martin still.
I that's hurtful. That's not nice. I'm soft, remember? I'm just so soft. That's why I'm able to walk into YouTube chat with my head held high every single day. Here we go.
I thought you were going to say with your dick in your hands, and I was like, I don't know where you're going to that.
Sure.
A couple super chats we missed.
Pretty sick, Chubbs.
Mr. Papa Giorgio, Curry and Bazemore or Giannis and Delon Wright for a DK GPP? I like Delon too much to not take that side. Delon Wright and Giannis for me.
Yep. Got to go that side too. And again, the Delon Wright thing, I get it. He's a phenomenal player. I'm already invested in him in other facets of my life that I don't have to go super crazy for him on DFS. And I think there are some pivots that might need to get made depending on how Draymond Green news breaks out.
And Kyle Frank asking Delon Wright or Dragic, 4,900 versus 5,200. I would go Delon for there too. And I think the steal upside for Delon makes him actually a little more interesting on FanDuel in some respects. But both guys are solid though. So hopefully you chose right, Kyle. But Eric, really final one here, Delon or Dragic?
Let's go Dragic. Let's get weird. Also, Eric more donkey than Chalk. Thank you so much. I love being a donkey. That's nice. He's an adorable feature in Shrek. I'll let it.
I got a lot of pauses. I'm not much for the pauses. I don't even know. I don't even know what I said that time. Things are just flying today. Well, I'm desperately trying to get my line.
We'll find out after the show. Jordan will tell you.
All right. So we are just about locked. So let's get the plugs in. I think we got all the questions in the Slack as well. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. We got everybody. All right. So first of all, we appreciate you guys a lot for watching this stream and sticking with us here on the Awesemo channel. So make sure you are subscribed, as I mentioned earlier in the show, and also make sure you're playing on No House Advantage. We talked about it briefly and then got hit by the deluge of news. But on slates like this, I think especially over the next few weeks, you are going to see lines that make absolutely no sense on No House Advantage. And that is the time to be playing on there, because lines that make no sense give you a higher chance or higher probability to win one of their tournaments or just to finish well and cash out well. In addition to that, you get the deposit bonus, $20 deposit match for you at No House Advantage. So go play at nohouseadvantage.com, download them in the App Store, and use that promo code Awesemo when you sign up. And of course, make sure to go to awesemo.com/join to get all the data that we use here. Boom Bust Tool in particular has been, I would say, life-changing for me in the last few weeks in terms of just easing my effort involved with getting good results. So make sure to add that to part of your process. Eric, what are the final plugs for you here? I actually was going to make a point to talk about today. I realized when looking through the show schedule where I now do 3 shows most days, and the only other person at Awesemo who does 3 shows most days is one Eric Lindquist. So hardest working man at Awesemo potentially, besides I guess all of our producers who get worked like they're
besides Jordan, besides Tom, besides Alex, besides
Well, yeah, it's talent wise.
Oh, okay. Well, obviously, the starlet now of Awesemo.com, the dramatic thespian that I am. Here we are. But no, I'll see you tomorrow again on the tip off. You and me hanging out once more. Maybe you'll get a voice. Maybe you won't. We'll find out.
We will indeed find out tomorrow. Follow at Eric Lindquist, follow at Chris Spags, follow at Awesemo_com, and shout out to our producer, Jordan, the real hardest working man at Awesemo amidst so many hardworking men and women here. We appreciate you guys a bunch. Pay attention to the news, for the love of God. Just watch out for everything that could happen, because we all know how that goes. But we appreciate you guys for being here. Enjoy your nights and good luck. Whew, that was a harrowing one. That was a lot of shit.